The $20 ranch came with a rope and a woman swinging from it. Samuel Hayes dropped his saddlebags in the dust, staring at the figure hanging from the gate beam. $22 for prime Arizona land should have been his first warning. But nothing, not outlaws, not drought, not Apache raids could have prepared him for this. The girl's face was turning blue rope, cutting deep into her neck. He had seconds to decide walk away from this nightmare or cut her down and inherit whatever hell had brought her to this moment. Friends, this is a story of bloodwater and redemption in the American West. If you're watching from Tucson, Phoenix, or anywhere else under God's wide sky, drop your city's name below. I want to know how far this tale travels. Now settle in, because what happened next changed everything. The knife felt heavy in Samuel's hand as he sawed through the rope. The girl's body crashed into his arms, dead weight that nearly sent them both tumbling into the dirt. Her skin was cold as Riverstone's lips the color of storm clouds. "Come on," he muttered, laying her flat on the ground. "Don't you dare die on me now." He pressed his ear to her chest. Nothing. No rise, no fall, no whisper of life. Samuel had seen plenty of death in his 34 years, seen it in the war, seen it on the trail, seen it in saloons and back alleys from Missouri to California. But this was different. This girl couldn't be more than 20 with Apache features softened by something else, Mexican maybe, or even white blood mixed in somewhere along the line. His hands moved without thinking, pressing down on her chest the way he'd seen a field medic do once trying to force life back into a soldier who'd drowned crossing a river. Once, twice, 3 times. Then he pinched her nose, sealed his mouth over hers, and breathed. Her lips tasted of dust and desperation. Nothing. He pressed harder, pumped faster. Sweat ran down his face despite the evening chill. The sun was sinking behind the mountains, painting the sky the color of fresh blood. If she died here, if this stranger died in his arms on land he'd just bought for the price of a good saddle, what then? Breathe. He slammed his fist against her chest. The girl's body convulsed, her back arched like a drawn bow, and suddenly she was coughing, gagging, clawing at her throat. Samuel rolled her onto her side as she vomited into the dust, her whole body shaking like she'd been pulled from ice water. "Easy," he said, one hand on her shoulder. "Easy now. You're safe." She jerked away from his touch, eyes wild as a cornered animal's. Those eyes green as spring grass, completely at odds with her bronze skin and black hair. She tried to speak, but only managed a raspy croak. "Don't try to talk yet." Samuel uncorked his canteen, held it out to her. Small sips. She stared at the canteen like it might be poisoned, then at him, then at the ranch house behind him, a 2-story structure that had seen better days, paint peeling like dead skin windows, cracked or missing entirely. When her gaze found the severed rope still swinging from the gate beam, she touched her throat. The rope burn was already turning purple. "Who did this to you?" Samuel asked. She took the canteen with shaking hands, drank carefully. When she finally spoke, her voice was rough as sandpaper. They'll come back." "Who will set—" "The Maddox brothers." She struggled to her feet, swaying. Samuel reached out to steady her, but she stepped back. "You need to leave, now, before they—" "This is my land," Samuel said. "Bought and paid for. Got the deed right here." He patted his vest pocket. The girl laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "Your land, mister, you just bought yourself a death sentence for $22. Name's Samuel Hayes, and you are—" She studied him for a long moment, this stranger who'd cut her down, who'd breathed life back into her lungs. He was tall, lean, in the way of men who'd known hunger, with hands scarred from work and fighting. His face was all angles and shadows in the dying light, dark hair hanging past his collar, gray eyes that had seen too much. "Lydia," she finally said. "Lydia Kane." "Well, Miss Kane, suppose you tell me why the Maddox brothers strung you up on my new property." "Your property?" Her green eyes flashed. "This ranch belonged to my father, has been Kane land for 15 years. Samuel pulled the deed from his pocket, unfolded it carefully. "Says here it belonged to one Marcus Finch. Sold to me through the land office in Tucson." Lydia snatched the paper, scanned it. Her face went pale beneath the bronze. "This is forged. My father never sold to any Marcus Finch. He's been dead 2 months. The Maddox family killed him." That's a serious accusation. It's the truth. She handed the deed back, her fingers brushing his. My father discovered something they want. They've been trying to force me off this land ever since. Today She touched her throat again. They said if I wouldn't sign it over, they'd just wait until I was dead to take it. Samuel looked at the ranch house, at the barn beyond it, at the scrub desert stretching out in all directions. It didn't look like much. Certainly not worth killing for. What did your father discover? Lydia glanced around nervously as if the Joshua trees might be listening. Water, an underground river, enough to irrigate 1,000 acres, maybe more. Now that was worth killing for. In Arizona territory, water was more precious than gold, more valuable than cattle. A man with water could build an empire. A man without it would die trying. Where? Samuel asked. Hidden. My father was careful. He made maps, but he hid them, said if the wrong people found out. She shivered despite the warm evening. The Maddox family owns the biggest ranch in the territory, but they're running dry. Their wells are failing. If they don't find new water soon, they'll lose everything. So they killed your father and tried to kill you. They did kill me, Lydia said quietly. You just undid it. The sound of horses made them both turn. 3 riders were approaching from the east, dark shapes against the darker mountains. Samuel's hand went to the Colt 45 on his hip. Get inside, he told Lydia. Those are their men. Wade Harper, and I said get inside. She hesitated, then ran for the house. Samuel watched the riders come, counted the guns. 3 men, probably 6 guns between them. He had 1 Colt, a Winchester in his saddlebags, and a belly full of stubbornness that had kept him alive through worse odds. The riders pulled up 20 feet away. The man in the center was big-built like a prize fighter, with a face that had taken its share of punishment. His companions were lean and hungry-looking, the kind of men who'd shoot you for your boots if they needed them. Evening, the big man said. His voice was cultured at odds with his battered appearance. Name's Wade Harper. I work for the Maddox family. Samuel Hayes. I own this place now. Harper smiled, showing gold teeth. That's so. Well, Mr. Hayes, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. This property is under dispute. The Kane girl, you haven't seen her, have you? She's wanted for questioning about her father's death. Haven't seen anyone. Samuel lied easily. Place was empty when I got here. Harper's eyes went to the severed rope hanging from the gate. That's interesting, because we left her right there not 2 hours ago. Suicide, you understand. Poor girl couldn't handle the guilt of killing her own father. You're saying she murdered her father, then hanged herself. Tragic, isn't it? Harper's smile widened. These mixed-blood girls, they're unstable. All that conflicting nature in their veins. Samuel felt his jaw clench. Seems to me if she hanged herself, she'd still be hanging there. Unless someone cut her down. Harper leaned forward in his saddle. Mr. Hayes, I'm going to give you some friendly advice. This land is cursed. The previous owner, Marcus Finch, he lasted exactly 1 day before deciding to sell. The owner before him dead within a week. There's something about this place that brings out the worst in people. I'll take my chances. Will you now? Harper nodded to his companions. They spread out slightly, hands resting on their guns. See, the thing is, we really need to find that girl. She has something that belongs to the Maddox family, some papers her father stole. We'd be willing to pay handsomely for their return. Say $500. I told you I haven't seen any girl. Harper's friendly mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and deadly underneath. Mr. Hayes, you seem like a reasonable man, a war veteran by the look of you. You've seen enough violence for 1 lifetime, I'd wager. Why not take the money, forget you ever saw this place, and ride on $500 could set you up nicely somewhere else? Or I could stay here on my legally purchased land and mind my own business. Your funeral, Harper said. He gathered his reins, prepared to leave, then paused. Oh, one more thing. That bill of sale you have. You might want to check the fine print. Marcus Finch had some debts, substantial ones, to the Maddox family as it happens. Those debts transfer with the property. You'll be hearing from our lawyers. He touched his hat brim mockingly and rode off, his men following. Samuel watched until they were swallowed by the darkness, then went inside. The house was in worse shape than it looked from outside. Furniture, overturned drawers pulled out, and emptied papers scattered across the floor. Lydia stood in what had been the kitchen, trying to light a lantern with shaking hands. "Let me," Samuel said, taking the matches from her. The lantern flared to life, casting dancing shadows on the walls. In the light, he could see the house had been thoroughly ransacked. They were looking for those maps. "They've torn the place apart 3 times since my father died." Lydia rubbed her arms like she was cold. "Each time they get more violent. Today they finally decided to stop pretending." "Where are the maps?" She looked at him suspiciously. "Why should I trust you? For all I know, you're working with them." "If I was working with them, would I have cut you down?" "Maybe that was the plan. Save me, gain my trust, get the maps." Samuel set the lantern on what was left of the kitchen table. "Miss Kane, I've got $22 invested in this property. That was most of my money. I've got a horse, a saddle, 2 guns, and the clothes on my back. I'm not working for anybody but myself. Now those men will be back probably with more guns. If there's really water here, if your father really found something, then we need to make a decision. We can fight them or we can run. But we need to do it together." Lydia's green eyes reflected the lantern light. "You don't even know me." "I know you're tough enough to survive a hanging. That's a good start." She was quiet for a moment, then walked to the fireplace. The stones were blackened from years of use, some cracked from the heat. She pressed on one particular stone, and it shifted. Behind it was a hidden space, and from that space she pulled out an oilcloth bundle. "My father was a surveyor before he was a rancher," she said, unwrapping the bundle. "The Mexican government hired him to map water sources back when this was still Mexico. He knew this land better than anyone." The maps were beautiful, hand-drawn with the precision of an artist and the detail of a scientist. Samuel had seen plenty of maps in the war, but nothing like these. Every elevation change, every seasonal stream, every potential drilling spot was marked. "This is incredible," Samuel said. "But I don't see—" Lydia pulled out another map, this one newer. 3 months ago, my father was drilling a new well. The old one was going dry, like everyone's wells are going dry. He went deeper than anyone had gone before. And he found it." She pointed to a spot marked with a red X. "An underground river, fed by the mountains flowing year-round. Enough water to turn this desert into paradise." "Where's this spot?" "Under the barn. He covered the well, told no one but me. He was going to wait until he had enough money to buy the surrounding land, then develop it properly. But somehow Thomas Maddox found out." Someone talked. "My father hired 2 men to help with the drilling, cousins named Frank and Jesse Bonner. They disappeared the day after we struck water. Next thing we knew, Thomas Maddox was making offers on our land. When my father refused," she trailed off. "They killed him. Made it look like an accident. He was breaking a horse, it threw him, broke his neck. But I knew better. That was his gentlest mare, wouldn't hurt a soul. Someone did something to make her buck." Samuel studied the maps more carefully. If this was true, if there really was that much water under this property, then the Maddox family wouldn't stop until they had it, and now he was standing between them and their prize. "We need to get word to the authorities," he said. Lydia laughed bitterly. "The sheriff is Thomas Maddox's brother-in-law. The judge owes him money. The mayor does business with him. Mr. Hayes, the Maddox family, owns this territory in all but name. Then we need proof they killed your father, something that would hold up in court." "How?" "He's been in the ground 2 months." Samuel was about to answer when he heard it horses again, but more this time. Many more. He grabbed the Winchester from his saddlebags, checked the loads. "How many guns do you have?" "My father's Henry rifle and a shotgun, but I don't—" "Can you shoot?" "Yes, but—" "Then get them. Now." Lydia ran upstairs. Samuel blew out the lantern and positioned himself by the front window. In the moonlight, he could see them at least a dozen riders spreading out to surround the house. Wade Harper was back, and he'd brought an army. "Samuel Hayes," Harper's voice carried clearly in the still night air. "We know the girl is in there. Send her out, and you can ride away. This is your last chance to be reasonable." Lydia came back down with the weapons. In the darkness, Samuel could barely see her, but he could feel her trembling beside him. "There's too many," she whispered. She was right. In a straight fight, they wouldn't last 5 minutes, but Samuel hadn't survived this long by fighting straight. "You know this house," he said quietly. "Is there a root cellar? A back way out?" "There's a tunnel. My father dug it during the Apache Wars. It comes out by the old well 50 yards from the house." "Take the maps and go." "What about you?" "I'll buy you time. Hold them here while you get away." "They'll kill you." "Maybe, but those maps are the only proof of what your father found. Without them, this is all for nothing. You need to get them to someone who can help. A federal marshal maybe, or a newspaper in Tucson." "I'm not leaving," Lydia said firmly. "This is my land, my father's land. I'd rather die defending it than run." Before Samuel could argue, Harper called out again. "Mr. Hayes? I'm a reasonable man, but my patience is wearing thin. You've got 1 minute to send out the girl, or we're coming in." Samuel made a decision. "Where's the tunnel?" "Kitchen pantry under the flour barrel. Go down there and wait. Don't come out no matter what you hear." "What are you going to do?" "Something stupid." He handed her his Colt. "If this goes bad, if I don't make it, you follow that tunnel and you run. You get on my horse, he's fast and he's smart, and you don't stop until you reach Tucson. Samuel, go, now." She hesitated, then stood on her toes and kissed his cheek. "Thank you for saving me." Then she was gone, disappearing into the pantry. Samuel heard the flour barrel scrape across the floor, heard the tunnel cover lift and close. He took a deep breath, then opened the front door and stepped onto the porch, Winchester in hand, but not aimed. "Harper," he called. "Let's talk." The riders moved closer, forming a semicircle around the front of the house. Harper dismounted, walked forward until he was at the bottom of the porch steps. In the moonlight, Samuel could see he was smiling. "Have you come to your senses, Mr. Hayes? I've been thinking about your offer, $500 to disappear. That offer was for the maps and the girl. What if I could give you something better? What if I could give you the water itself?" Harper's smile faltered. "What are you talking about?" "The girl told me everything. About the underground river her father found, about the well under the barn. She showed me the maps." Samuel paused, letting that sink in. "But here's the thing, Harper. You work for the Maddox family, but you're not a Maddox. What do you get out of this? A pat on the head, a bonus. Meanwhile, they're about to become the richest family in the territory." "Your point." "My point is, why should they have all of it? Why not take some for yourself?" Harper took a step closer. "You're suggesting we betray my employers. I'm suggesting a business arrangement. You and me. We could stake claims on the surrounding land before the Maddox family even knows the water is there. By the time they figure it out, we'll own everything around them. They'll have to deal with us or watch their water get pumped dry by their neighbors." "And the girl—" "What girl?" Samuel asked. "I haven't seen any girl." Harper was quiet for a long moment, considering. Samuel could practically see the greed working behind his eyes. "You'd need capital to buy that land. Where would you get it?" "That's where you come in. You must have connections, men who'd invest in a sure thing. We split everything 50-50. 60-40, my favor. Done." Samuel extended his hand. "Partners." Harper climbed the porch steps, reached for Samuel's hand. "Partners." The moment their hands touched, Samuel jerked Harper forward and drove his knee into the man's stomach. Harper doubled over, gasping, and Samuel brought the rifle butt down on the back of his head. Harper collapsed unconscious. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then everyone moved at once. "Kill him!" one of Harper's men shouted. Samuel dove back through the doorway as bullets splintered the doorframe. He kicked the door shut, barred it, then ran for the stairs. Gunfire erupted from all sides, windows, shattering lead punching through the thin walls. He made it to the second floor and took position at a window overlooking the front. The riders were dismounting, preparing to rush the house. Samuel picked his targets carefully. The Winchester held 15 rounds. He had maybe 20 more in his pockets. Not enough for a prolonged fight, but maybe enough to make them think twice. He fired and a man spun and fell. Fired again and another cursed and grabbed his shoulder. The others scrambled for cover. "The house is surrounded." "Hayes," someone yelled. "You're just putting off the inevitable." They were right, of course. But every minute he held them here was another minute for Lydia to get away. He fired again, keeping their heads down, making them cautious. Then he smelled smoke. Looking down, he could see flames licking at the side of the house. They'd set it on fire. Smart. They'd burn him out or burn him alive. Either way, they won. The smoke thickened quickly, the old dry wood catching like kindling. Samuel coughed, eyes watering. The heat rose through the floorboards. He had minutes, maybe less. He made it back to the stairs, but the lower floor was already an inferno. The front door was a wall of flame. The smoke was so thick he could barely see. His lungs burned with every breath. Then he remembered the tunnel. He dropped to his hands and knees, crawling below the worst of the smoke. The kitchen was an oven, but he found the pantry. The flour barrel had been moved back into place. He shoved it aside, found the tunnel entrance, and dropped down. The tunnel was narrow, barely wide enough for his shoulders. He crawled through absolute darkness, dirt falling in his face, his back scraping the ceiling. Behind him, he could hear the house collapsing, the roar of the fire like a living thing. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, his hand hit wood. The exit. He pushed up, and suddenly he was breathing clean air lying beside the old well. The house was fully engulfed flames reaching into the night sky. By its light, he could see Harper's men standing in a circle watching it burn. None of them were looking his way. Samuel stayed low, creeping through the scrub brush. His horse was where he'd left it, still saddled, ground-tied like the well-trained animal it was. But as he reached for the reins, someone said, "Going somewhere." He turned. One of Harper's men stood 10 feet away, gun drawn. The man smiled. "Thought someone might try the back door. Harper's going to want to talk to you. If you're still alive means the girl might be too." "The girl's dead," Samuel said. "Died in the fire." "We'll see about that." The man gestured with his gun. "Move. Nice and slow." Samuel took a step forward, then another. The man relaxed slightly, confident he had the upper hand. That's when Lydia rose from the brush behind him and swung a shovel. The metal rang against the man's skull, and he dropped like a stone. "Thought I told you to run," Samuel said. "This is my land," she replied. "I'm done running." They could hear shouting from the house. Someone had noticed the man was missing. "We need to go," Samuel said. "Now." They mounted his horse, Lydia behind him with her arms around his waist. As they rode off, Samuel looked back at the burning house. Harper was standing in front of it, and even from a distance, Samuel could see his fury. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. They rode hard through the night, not stopping until Samuel's horse was lathered with sweat. They found shelter in a box canyon hidden from view by a stand of cottonwoods. Samuel built a small fire while Lydia watered the horse from a spring. "They'll come after us," she said, sitting beside him. "Let them come. We've got the maps. We've got proof of what your father found. And who's going to believe us? Like I said, the Maddox family owns everyone who matters." Samuel poked at the fire with a stick. "Not everyone. There's a federal judge in Prescott, William Conway. He's straight as they come. If we can get to him, show him the maps, tell him what happened. That's a 3-day ride through Maddox territory. Then we'd better get started at first light." Lydia was quiet for a while, staring into the fire. In its light, Samuel could see the bruises on her neck, more clearly purple and black like some terrible necklace. "Why did you save me?" she finally asked. "You could have just ridden on. Pretended you never saw me." Samuel thought about how to answer. The truth was complicated. He'd come to Arizona to escape his past, to find somewhere he could disappear. The war had left him with skills he didn't want and memories he couldn't forget. He'd drifted from town to town, working when he could, moving on when the ghost caught up. "Maybe I'm tired of pretending I don't see things," he said finally. "Maybe I figured it was time to stop running from fights that matter. And this fight matters. A young woman nearly died for defending what was hers. Her father was murdered for finding something that could help a lot of people. Yeah, I'd say it matters." Lydia pulled the maps from inside her shirt where she'd hidden them. "My father used to say water would civilize this territory, make it possible for families to settle, to build communities. He dreamed of schools and churches and towns where children could grow up safe." Sounds like a good dream. "The Maddox family would use it to build an empire. They'd control who gets water and who doesn't, who lives and who dies." She looked at Samuel. I can't let that happen. Then we won't. She smiled the first real smile he'd seen from her. It transformed her face, made her look younger, softer. You're either very brave or very foolish, Samuel Hayes. Probably both. They settled in for the night, taking turns keeping watch. Samuel took the first shift rifle across his knees, listening to the desert sounds. Coyotes howled in the distance. An owl hooted somewhere in the cottonwoods. Normal sounds. Peaceful sounds. It was near dawn when he heard the horses. He woke Lydia with a hand over her mouth, finger to his lips. She nodded, instantly alert. They quickly smothered the fire, gathered their things. Samuel peered through the trees and counted 6 riders picking their way up the canyon. Harper, Lydia whispered. Can't tell, but who else would be out here? They backed deeper into the canyon, leading the horse. The walls narrowed, then opened into a small clearing, dead end. They were trapped. Can we climb out? Lydia asked, looking at the canyon walls. Maybe you could. I couldn't, and we'd have to leave the horse. The sound of horses grew closer. They could hear voices now, Harper's distinctive cultured tone among them. They came this way. The tracks are fresh. Samuel looked around desperately. They're a cluster of boulders creating a natural fortification. Get behind those rocks, he told Lydia. Take the rifle. What about you? I'm going to try something. He pulled his knife, started gathering dry brush. If this doesn't work, if they get past me, you climb. Don't look back. Samuel, promise me. She grabbed his face, kissed him hard on the mouth. Don't you dare die on me, Samuel Hayes. Then she was gone, scrambling behind the rocks. Samuel worked quickly, piling brush at the narrowest part of the canyon, where riders would have to come through single file. He had one match left, one chance. The riders appeared at the canyon mouth. Harper in the lead, his head bandaged where Samuel had struck him. Hayes, he called. We know you're in there. Canyon only has one way out, and we're blocking it. Samuel struck the match, touched it to the brush. The dry wood caught instantly, flames leaping up, creating a barrier of fire. It wouldn't last long, but it might be enough. What the hell? Harper cursed as smoke billowed toward them. The horses shied away from the fire, whinnying nervously. Samuel fired through the smoke, saw a man fall from his saddle. Fired again, and another cursed. The smoke was thick now, choking, but it worked both ways. If he couldn't see them clearly, they couldn't see him either. Go around, Harper shouted. Find another way. There is no other way, someone replied. Canyon's a dead end. The fire was already dying, the brush burning too quickly. Samuel fell back, took position behind a boulder. In minutes, they'd be through. That's when he heard it thunder. But the sky was clear. The sound grew louder, and Harper's men started shouting. Through the dying flames, Samuel saw riders, a dozen of them, wearing the crossed sabers of the cavalry. Stand down, a voice commanded. Everyone, drop your weapons. Harper wheeled his horse around. Who the hell are you? A man rode forward, his uniform dusty, but his bearing unmistakably military. Captain Robert Morrison, 4th Cavalry. We've been tracking you since you burned that house, Mr. Harper. You have no authority here. This is a civil matter. Arson is a federal crime, the captain said calmly. And from what I hear, you've been busy. Murder, attempted murder, forgery. The federal marshal in Prescott is very interested in talking to you. Samuel stood up, hands visible, but ready to go for his gun if needed. Captain Morrison. The officer looked at him. You'd be Samuel Hayes. Yes, sir. How did you... Miss Kane found us last night. Rode into our patrol camp with quite a story. He looked past Samuel. You can come out, Miss Kane. It's safe. Lydia emerged from behind the rocks. But that didn't make sense. She'd been with him all night. Unless... Another figure appeared from behind the cavalry. A young woman who looked exactly like Lydia, down to the green eyes and rope burns on her throat. Samuel's mind reeled. What? My sister Lydia said, moving to stand beside her twin. Anna, we've been taking turns leading Harper's men away from the maps. Twins, Samuel said, feeling like a fool. You're twins. Father always said 2 daughters were better than 1, Anna said. Her voice was slightly huskier than Lydia's, the only difference Samuel could detect. When they hanged me, Lydia was already riding for help. But I cut you down. I brought you back. Shh, you saved Anna, Lydia said. I was watching from the barn. When I saw what you did, saw you were willing to fight Harper, I knew we could trust you. Harper tried to spur his horse to run, but the soldiers were ready. They brought him down with lassos, dragged him from his saddle. His men surrendered without a fight, faced with military carbines. Captain Morrison dismounted, walked over to Samuel. Miss Kane, both. Miss Kane showed me the maps, told me about the water. This is going to change everything out here. The Maddox family, Samuel started, will be receiving a visit from federal marshals today. We've been building a case against them for months. Cattle rustling, land fraud, intimidation. This was the evidence we needed. Samuel looked at the twins. They stood side by side, identical, but for the way they held themselves, Lydia straight and defiant, Anna slightly favoring her left side where the hanging had hurt her. You planned this whole thing. Not planned, Lydia said. Improvised. When Anna survived the hanging when you saved her, we saw an opportunity. One of us to guard the maps, one to get help. You could have told me. Would you have fought as hard if you'd known help was coming? Anna asked. Would Harper have believed you were alone? She had a point. Samuel's genuine desperation had sold the deception. Still, he felt manipulated, used, but looking at the soldiers leading Harper away in irons, he couldn't argue with the results. What happens now? He asked the captain. Now we secure the water rights properly. The Kane sisters have the strongest claim, their father's original homestead documents and the maps he made. But from what I understand, you have a legal deed to the property as well, even if it was obtained through fraud. It's their land, Samuel said immediately. I've got no claim to it. Actually, Lydia said, we've been discussing that, Anna and I. The ranch is too much for us to handle alone. We need someone we can trust, someone who's already proven he'll fight for what's right. A partner, Anna added. Equal shares. The water belongs to everyone, but someone needs to manage it. Make sure it's distributed fairly. Samuel looked between them. You're offering me a partnership after I just spent $22 on a fraudulent deed. Consider it an investment, Lydia said and smiled. The best $22 you ever spent. Captain Morrison cleared his throat. We'll need to formalize this in Prescott. Legal documents, proper deeds, water rights allocations. It'll take some time. We've got time, Anna said, looking at the sunrise painting the canyon walls gold. We've got all the time in the world now. As they rode out of the canyon, Harper tied to a cavalry horse. His men under guard Samuel found himself riding between the Kane sisters. They'd cleaned up as best they could, but the marks of their ordeal were still visible. Anna's bruised throat, Lydia's torn dress, the exhaustion in both their eyes. Your father would be proud, he told them. He always said this land would bloom someday, Anna replied. That water would bring life to the desert. He just never imagined he wouldn't be here to see it. Lydia added, her voice catching slightly. They rode in silence for a while, the cavalry spread out around them in protective formation. As they crested a rise, Samuel could see the ranch in the distance, or what was left of it. The house was a blackened ruin, smoke still rising from the ashes. But the barn stood intact, and beneath it, according to the maps, lay enough water to transform the territory. We'll need to rebuild, Samuel said. Everything, Lydia agreed. House fences, corrals, it'll take months. Years, maybe, Anna said. But we'll do it right. Build something that'll last. Samuel thought about the life he'd been running, from the aimless drifting from town to town. Maybe this was what he'd been looking for without knowing it, a purpose, a place to stand and fight for something worthwhile. And if that place came with two remarkable women who'd already proven they could outthink and outfight most men he'd known well, there were worse fates. Harper said this land was cursed, he mused, that everyone who owned it came to a bad end. Superstition, Lydia scoffed. Besides, Anna added with a slight smile, we're Apache on our mother's side. If there's a curse, we know how to break it. Captain Morrison called a halt at a stream to water the horses. While the soldiers dealt with the prisoners, Samuel and the sisters sat in the shade of a cottonwood sharing what little food they had. There's something else, Lydia said quietly, pulling another paper from her hidden pocket. Father wrote a will. We never filed it because we knew the Maddox family would contest it, probably forged documents saying he owed them money. But now with federal backing. Samuel read the will. It was simple, direct, leaving everything to his daughters. But there was a codicil at the bottom added in what looked like a shakier hand. Should my daughters choose to marry their husband, shall have equal share in the water rights provided they prove themselves worthy protectors of this gift. Your father was thinking ahead, Samuel observed. He was a romantic, Anna said. Always believed we'd find good men someday, men who'd fight for us instead of trying to own us. Not many of those out here, Samuel said. No, Lydia agreed, looking at him steadily. There aren't. The moment stretched between them, full of possibility. Then Captain Morrison called out that they were moving again, and the spell broke. The rest of the journey to Prescott passed without incident. Harper had gone silent, staring at nothing, perhaps contemplating his future in federal prison. His men were already turning on each other, each claiming the others had done worse things, each angling for leniency. Prescott was bigger than Samuel had expected, a proper town with real buildings, not just the collection of tents and shacks that marked so many Arizona settlements. The federal courthouse stood proud on the main street, its flag snapping in the afternoon breeze. Judge William Conway was everything Captain Morrison had promised, stern but fair, with eyes that seemed to see through any deception. He listened to the entire story, examined the maps, read the will and the forged deed. This is quite a situation, he said finally. Water rights are the most contentious issue in the territory. Wars have been fought over less water than what you're claiming exists under your property. It's there, Lydia said firmly. Our father found it. We have the documentation. I don't doubt it, but managing such a resource responsibly, that's a heavy burden. Are you prepared for it? We are, Anna said. With Mr. Hayes as our partner. The judge looked at Samuel. And you, sir, you're prepared to take on not just the Kane sisters as partners, but potentially the enmity of the most powerful family in the territory. Judge, I've been running from responsibility most of my life. Maybe it's time I stopped. Conway nodded slowly. Very well. I'll draw up the papers. The land will be held in joint ownership, the Kane sisters and Mr. Hayes, equal partners. The water rights will be administered under federal oversight for the first year to ensure fair distribution. Any attempt by the Maddox family or anyone else to interfere will be met with the full force of federal law. What about Harper and his men? Samuel asked. They'll stand trial for arson, conspiracy, and attempted murder. Given the evidence, I expect significant sentences. As for Thomas Maddox himself, federal marshals should be arresting him as we speak. As they left the courthouse, legal documents in hand, Samuel felt a weight lift from his shoulders. It wasn't over there would be challenges ahead. Hard work, probably more fights. But for the first time in years, he was looking forward instead of back. So, partner, Lydia said, linking her arm through his. Ready to build an empire. I thought we were building something for everyone, Samuel replied. We are, Anna said, taking his other arm. But that doesn't mean we can't benefit too. Father always said prosperity shared is prosperity doubled. As they walked down Prescott's main street, three unlikely partners bound by water and blood and fire, Samuel caught their reflection in a store window. He looked different, somehow older maybe, or just more certain. The drifter was gone. In his place stood a man with purpose. There's something else, Lydia said as they reached the hotel where they'd be staying the night. Anna and I have been talking about what happens next, about us. Samuel's heart skipped. Us? 3 partners, Anna said carefully. Living and working together. It could get complicated. It's already complicated, Samuel pointed out. It could get more complicated, Lydia said, and there was something in her green eyes that made Samuel's mouth go dry. But before anyone could say anything more, a commotion erupted down the street. A rider came galloping in, horse lathered with sweat, the man swaying in his saddle. He practically fell from his mount in front of the sheriff's office. The Maddox Ranch, he gasped. It's under siege. Thomas Maddox has barricaded himself inside with 24 men. Says he'll kill anyone who comes near, the federal marshals. One's dead already. The sheriff emerged along with Captain Morrison and several soldiers. How many guns does Maddox have? Morrison demanded. Enough for a war. He's got rifles, ammunition, even some dynamite. Says the government has no right to his land or his business. Morrison cursed. We'll need reinforcements. This could turn into a bloodbath. Or, Samuel said quietly, you could try another way. Everyone turned to look at him. What other way? Morrison asked. Cut off his water. What? The Maddox ranch is already running dry. That's why they wanted our water so badly. How long can 24 men last without water in this heat? Morrison considered. Not long, but Maddox must have some reserves. Maybe, Anna said, catching on. But if someone were to disable his remaining wells, that would be dangerous, the sheriff said. Borderline suicidal. Not if you know the land, Lydia said. And we do. Father surveyed the entire territory, including the Maddox ranch. Samuel looked at the sisters. They were already thinking the same thing he was. It was crazy dangerous, probably foolish, but it might prevent a massacre. Give us tonight, Samuel said to Morrison. If we can cut off their water, Maddox will have to surrender by tomorrow. And if you can't, then you can have your siege. Morrison clearly didn't like it, but he had limited options. You have until dawn. After that, we go in hard. As the sun set, Samuel and the Kane sisters rode out of Prescott, accompanied by a small detail of soldiers who would wait at a safe distance. The Maddox Ranch was 5 miles outside town, a sprawling complex of buildings surrounded by flat, open ground, difficult to approach without being seen. Father's maps show 3 wells, Lydia said, studying the documents by moonlight. 1 by the main house, 1 by the bunkhouse, 1 out by the corrals. The one by the corrals is probably dry, Anna said. That's the oldest. The bunkhouse well might still have water, but not much. So we focus on the main well, Samuel decided. Disable that, and they're done. They left the soldiers a mile out and approached on foot, moving through the darkness like ghosts. The ranch was lit up with torches and lanterns, men visible on the roofs and at windows, watching for the expected federal assault. The main well was in a courtyard partially protected but accessible from the north side where the shadows were deepest. They crept closer, Samuel in the lead, the sisters behind him. That's when they heard the crying. It was a child somewhere inside the main house, a young voice, frightened and alone. Maddox has children, Anna whispered. A son and daughter, Lydia confirmed. 8 and 10 years old. Samuel cursed silently. This changed everything. It was one thing to force hardened gunmen to surrender through thirst. It was another to make children suffer. We need a new plan, he said. Before anyone could respond, a voice called out from the darkness. Well, what do we have here? They spun around. Wade Harper stood there, gun drawn, grinning, despite the bandage around his head. Thought I was locked up, didn't you? Maddox has friends everywhere. Guard unlocked my cell, told me to get out here and help. It's over, Harper, Samuel said, hand moving toward his gun. Is it? I don't think so. Harper's gun swung toward Lydia. You cost me everything. My reputation, my job, my future. I think it's time to return the favor. He pulled the trigger. Several things happened at once. Samuel dove toward Lydia, knocking her aside. Anna threw a knife she'd had hidden her mother's Apache training showing through, and Harper's gun roared in the darkness. Samuel felt the bullet tear through his side, spinning him around. He hit the ground hard, blood already soaking his shirt. Through the pain, he saw Harper stagger Anna's knife in his shoulder, his gun falling from nerveless fingers. Then Lydia was there, her father's Colt in her hand, pressing it against Harper's temple. Give me a reason, she hissed. Please. Harper laughed, blood running down his arm. Go ahead. Make me a martyr. Maddox will paint me as a hero killed by savage women and their pet gunfighter. No, Anna said, picking up Harper's gun. You're going to help us. You're going to walk into that house and tell Maddox it's over. Tell him the wells are poisoned, the cavalry has cannons, whatever it takes. You're going to get those children out safely. And why would I do that? Because if you don't, Samuel said through gritted teeth, struggling to sit up. I'll tell everyone how you begged for your life, how you cried like a baby when 2 women and a wounded man captured you. Your reputation is all you have left, Harper. Do you really want to lose that too? Harper's face went pale in the moonlight. For a man like him, reputation was everything. To be known as a coward would be worse than death. Fine, he spat. But when this is over, you'll be in federal prison for 20 years, Lydia said. Now move. They watched Harper stumble toward the house, calling out to the guards. There was shouting confusion. Then miraculously the front door opened. Harper went inside. Tense minutes passed. Samuel's side burned like fire and he could feel blood pooling beneath him. Anna pressed her shawl against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "Hold on," she whispered. "Just hold on." Finally, the door opened again. Harper emerged, followed by two children, a boy and a girl, both terrified but unharmed. Behind them came a woman, probably Maddox's wife, and then Thomas Maddox himself appeared in the doorway. He was a big man, gone to fat, but still powerful, with the confident bearing of someone used to getting his way. He looked around, spotted them in the shadows. "So," he called out, "the Kane witches and their hired gun. Come to gloat. Come to offer you a deal." Samuel called back, his voice weaker than he'd like. "I don't make deals with thieves." "Then your children will watch their father die tomorrow," Lydia said coldly, "because that's what'll happen when the cavalry storms this place. You know it, we know it, but it doesn't have to end that way." Maddox was silent for a long moment. "What kind of deal?" "Surrender now," Anna said. "Face trial. You'll probably get prison time, but you'll live. Your family will keep some of their land, though not the parts built on fraud and murder, and the water rights will be distributed fairly the way they should have been from the start. And if I refuse, then we poison your wells tonight, and you can try to fight the cavalry while dying of thirst. Your choice." It wasn't really a choice, and everyone knew it. Maddox's shoulders sagged. "I need guarantees, protection for my family." "You'll get them," Samuel said. "Captain Morrison is an honorable man. He'll make sure your family is safe." Maddox looked at his children clinging to their mother. Then he threw his gun down. "Stand down!" he shouted to his men. "Everyone stand down! We're surrendering!" There was confusion, arguments, but eventually weapons were thrown from windows. Men emerged with hands raised. The siege was over before it began. As the soldiers moved in to secure the ranch, Samuel finally let himself collapse. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was Lydia and Anna leaning over him, their identical faces full of concern, calling his name. Samuel woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of carbolic and laudanum. His side felt like someone had pressed a hot iron against it, and when he tried to move, gentle hands held him down. "Don't," Lydia's voice said softly. "You'll tear the stitches." He blinked, focusing slowly. He was in a proper bed with clean sheets in what looked like a doctor's office. Lydia sat in a chair beside him, dark circles under her green eyes suggesting she'd been there a while. Anna stood by the window, watching the street outside. "How long?" Samuel's voice came out as a croak. 3 days, Anna said without turning around. "You lost a lot of blood. Dr. Williams said if we'd been 10 minutes later getting you here, you'd have died." Harper. In custody. Again. This time in military custody, so no convenient escapes. Lydia poured water from a pitcher, helped him drink. Thomas Maddox is in the cell next to him. Half his men turned witness against him to save their own skins. The children. Safe with their mother at her sister's house. The judge seized the Maddox ranch pending investigation, but he set aside a portion for the family to keep. Enough to live on, not enough to rebuild their empire. Samuel tried to sit up again, managed it this time despite the pain. "And our ranch, the water." The sisters exchanged a look he couldn't read. "That's become complicated, Anna said finally. "How complicated?" Lydia pulled out a newspaper, handed it to him. The headline read, "Water Discovery Transforms Territory, Federal Government to Oversee Distribution." Samuel read quickly. Word of the underground river had spread like wildfire. Settlers were already pouring in staking claims on surrounding land. The territorial governor had declared the water a public resource. There was talk of building a proper town, maybe even applying for statehood eventually. "This is good, isn't it?" Samuel asked. "This is what your father wanted." "Yes," Anna said, "but it also means we're about to be at the center of a lot of attention. Every speculator, businessman, and politician in the territory is going to want a piece of what we have." "Let them want," Samuel said. "We have legal claim federal protection. And a ranch that's currently a pile of ash," Lydia pointed out. "We need to rebuild, and fast or squatters will move in and claim we've abandoned it." Samuel swung his legs out of bed, testing his strength. The room spun slightly, but steadied. Then we'd better get started. You can barely stand, Anna protested. I can ride, that's all I need to do. Dr. Williams chose that moment to enter a thin man with intelligent eyes and hands that moved with practiced precision. Mr. Hayes, you're awake. Good. But if you're thinking of leaving, think again. That bullet did considerable damage. You need at least another week of rest. I don't have a week, Doc. Then you might not have a life. Infection is still a risk. Not to mention you could tear open the wound and bleed out. I'll be careful. The doctor looked at the sisters. Talk sense into him, please. This man saved your lives from what I hear. Don't let him throw his away out of stubbornness. After the doctor left, muttering about foolish cowboys, Lydia sat on the edge of the bed. He's right, you know. You nearly died for us. We can handle the ranch for another week. No, Samuel said firmly. If we're partners, we do this together, all of us. Besides, you need someone there who can shoot straight if trouble comes. We can shoot, Anna reminded him. I know, but 3 guns are better than 2. They argued for another hour, but Samuel was adamant. Finally, they compromised. He would return to the ranch, but would supervise from a chair while the sisters and hired workers did the heavy labor. The ride back was torture. Every bounce of the wagon sent fire through Samuel's side. But as they crested the rise and saw the ranch spread out below, he forgot the pain. Tents had sprung up like mushrooms after rain, dozens of them with more wagons arriving even as they watched. People were already working, some clearing the burned debris of the house, others marking out plots of land, still others drilling test wells. What the hell is this? Samuel demanded. A man approached their wagon wearing a badge that said Territorial Water Commission. He was young, eager with the soft look of someone who'd never worked with his hands. Miss Kane, he said, tipping his hat to the sisters. And you must be Mr. Hayes. I'm Gregory Thornton, appointed by the governor to oversee the water resource development. This is our land, Lydia said coldly. Of course. Your core 40 acres around the original well site. But the surrounding territory is now open for homesteading, with the provision that all water rights flow through the Central Commission, which you 3 will have a voice in naturally. Naturally, Samuel said dryly. And all these people, settlers, workers, entrepreneurs. We're building a town here, Mr. Hayes. Your discovery has changed everything. Our discovery? Anna corrected. Our father's discovery. Yes, quite right. And there's already a movement to name the town after him. Canesville has a nice ring to it, don't you think? Samuel could see both sisters struggling with emotion at that. Their father's dream was coming true, but in a way none of them had imagined. Over the next days, even as his wound slowly healed, Samuel watched their quiet ranch transform into a bustling settlement. Streets were laid out, plots marked a general store erected seemingly overnight. The barn which had survived the fire became the de facto town hall where disputes were settled and plans were made. But with progress came problems. We need law and order, Samuel said at one of the evening meetings. He was still pale, still moved carefully, but he'd insisted on being present. There were 2 fights today over water allocations, and someone's been stealing supplies. Already taken care of, Thornton said proudly. The territorial governor is sending a sheriff. Should be here any day. Who? Lydia asked suspiciously. A man named John Coulter. Excellent record, I'm told. Cleaned up Tombstone after the Earps left. Samuel had heard of Coulter. The man was indeed good at his job, perhaps too good. He had a reputation for seeing everything in black and white, no shades of gray. Coulter arrived 2 days later, and he was exactly what Samuel had expected. Tall, lean, with eyes like chips of ice, and guns worn low on his hips. He set up his office in a tent, posted a list of laws, and made it clear that violation would result in swift justice. I don't like him, Anna said that evening as they sat on the rebuilt porch of their temporary shelter, little more than a glorified shack, but it kept the rain off. You don't have to like him, Samuel replied, though privately he agreed. Just stay out of his way. But staying out of Coulter's way proved impossible. The sheriff seemed to take special interest in the Kane sisters, or more specifically in their Apache heritage. Mixed bloods can be unpredictable, he said one day, loud enough for them to hear as they walked past. Civilized one moment, savage the next. Bears watching. Samuel's hand went to his gun, but Lydia caught his arm. Don't. That's what he wants, an excuse to cause trouble. She was right, but it galled Samuel to let the insult pass. The sisters had shown more courage and intelligence than most men he'd known, and they deserved respect, not suspicion. The situation came to a head a week later. One of the new settlers, a man named Garrett, claimed someone had poisoned his well. The water had gone bad overnight, killing 2 of his horses. Coulter immediately suspected sabotage, and for reasons that seemed to have more to do with prejudice than evidence, focused his investigation on the Kane sisters. "You have to admit it's convenient," Coulter said, standing in their half-rebuilt house like he owned it. "Run off the settlers, keep all the water for yourselves." "That's absurd," Samuel said, getting to his feet despite the pain in his side. "These women have done nothing but help build this community. You're not exactly impartial, Hayes. Everyone knows you're sweet on them. Both of them, from what I hear." Coulter's smile was ugly. "That's another thing we need to discuss. The moral standards of this community." "Get out," Anna said quietly. "Excuse me. Get out." She stood, and suddenly she didn't look like a young woman anymore. She looked like her Apache ancestors, proud and dangerous. "You have no evidence, no cause, and no right to be here. Leave. Now." Coulter's hand drifted to his gun. "You threatening an officer of the law, girl?" "She's asking you to leave her property," Samuel said, stepping between them. "I'd say that's her right. And I'd say you're interfering with an investigation." The tension stretched taut as wire. Then Lydia spoke from the doorway. "Sheriff Coulter, I just came from the Garrett place. The smell from his well, it's sulfur, natural sulfur. His well hit a sulfur pocket. It happens. No one poisoned anything." Coulter's eyes narrowed. "How would you know about sulfur pockets?" "Because my father was a surveyor and taught us to recognize geological markers." "Would you like me to show you on his maps where the sulfur deposits likely are? You could warn other settlers to avoid those areas." It was a graceful way out, and even Coulter recognized it. He left without apology, but the damage was done. The seeds of suspicion had been planted in some minds, and Samuel could see how some of the newer settlers looked at the sisters differently now. That night, as they sat around their small fire, Anna said, "Maybe we should leave." "What?" Samuel stared at her. "This is your land, your father's legacy. What good is a legacy if we're not welcome, if people see us as threats or curiosities rather than neighbors?" "People are fools," Samuel said harshly. "You don't run from fools. You prove them wrong." "Easy for you to say," Lydia pointed out. "You're white. You fit in. We're caught between worlds, Samuel. Not Apache enough for the Apache, not white enough for the town." Samuel wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. He'd seen how the townspeople treated them, polite on the surface, but distant, wary. The sisters were essential to the town's existence because of the water, but that didn't mean they were accepted. "Then we make our own world, too," he said finally. "Right here, the 3 of us." The sisters looked at each other, then at him. "The 3 of us?" Anna asked softly. "If you'll have me." It was as close to a declaration as he'd come. The truth was, he'd fallen for both of them, each in different ways. Lydia with her fierce spirit and sharp mind, Anna with her quiet strength and deep compassion. He knew it was unusual, probably scandalous, definitely complicated, but nothing about their situation was normal anyway. "Samuel," Lydia began, but was interrupted by the sound of approaching horses. They grabbed their weapons, but relaxed when they saw it was Captain Morrison with a small detail of soldiers. The captain dismounted, his face grim. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "Wade Harper escaped." "What?" Samuel stood so fast his wound protested. "How?" "Killed 2 guards, stole a horse, left a message saying he has unfinished business here." The sisters went pale. Harper blamed them for his downfall, and he'd already proven he was willing to kill for revenge. "We're increasing patrols," Morrison continued, "but he knows this territory. He could be anywhere." "He'll come here," Anna said with certainty. "He's not the type to run. He'll want his revenge first." "Then we'll be ready for him," Samuel said. Morrison left 2 soldiers to stand guard, but Samuel knew it wasn't enough. Harper was smart, resourceful, and motivated. He'd find a way to get to them. The attack came 3 nights later, but not in the way they'd expected. Samuel woke to the smell of smoke. Not wood smoke from their fire, but something chemical acrid. He shook the sisters awake just as the first flames became visible. Someone had spread kerosene around their shelter and the newly rebuilt barn. The fire was already climbing the walls, eating through the dry wood like a living thing. "Out!" Samuel shouted, grabbing his gun. "Out the back!" They stumbled into the night, coughing from the smoke. The 2 soldiers were down, not dead, but unconscious, drugged somehow, Samuel guessed. And there, silhouetted against the flames, stood Wade Harper. "Déjà vu, isn't it?" Harper called out, gun in hand but not aimed. "Another house fire, but this time there's no tunnel to escape through." "It's me you want," Samuel said, stepping forward. "Let them go." "Oh, I don't think so. You all ruined me together. You'll all burn together." Harper raised his gun, aiming at Lydia. Samuel moved without thinking, throwing himself forward as Harper fired. But Anna was moving too, and Lydia, all 3 of them converging. The bullet caught Samuel in the shoulder, spinning him around. He heard another shot, saw Harper stagger. Anna had a Derringer one Samuel hadn't even known she carried. Harper fell to his knees, blood spreading across his shirt. You savage bitches! No!" Lydia said, standing over him with Samuel's dropped gun. "We're survivors." Harper tried to raise his weapon one more time. Lydia shot him between the eyes. For a moment there was only the crackling of flames and their ragged breathing. Then Samuel heard shouts, saw people running with buckets. The town had awakened to the fire. They formed a bucket brigade, settlers and workers fighting the flames together. Even Sheriff Coulter was there, working alongside everyone else. It took hours, but they saved the barn and kept the fire from spreading to the tents. As dawn broke, the 3 of them stood looking at the ruins of their second house. Samuel's shoulder was bandaged, his arm in a sling to match his still healing side. They were covered in soot, exhausted, homeless again. "I'm starting to think Harper was right about this place being cursed," Samuel said. "No," Anna said firmly. "We're still here, still standing. That's not a curse, that's strength." Sheriff Coulter approached, his usual stern expression replaced by something almost like respect. "The Harper fellow is dead." "Yes," Lydia said, meeting his eyes steadily. "Self-defense. Yes." Coulter nodded. "I'll write it up that way, and—" He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "You fought well, all of you. The town owes you thanks." It wasn't an apology for his earlier suspicions, but it was something. As Coulter walked away, Gregory Thornton approached with a group of settlers. Miss Kane, Mr. Hayes. We've been talking. The town wants to help rebuild your house, properly this time. Stone and adobe fireproof. It's the least we can do." "Why?" Anna asked, genuinely surprised. "Because you're part of this community," one of the settlers said. "Because your father's discovery gave us all a chance at a new life. And because," he looked embarrassed, "because we haven't always treated you fairly. This is our way of making amends." Over the next weeks, the house rose from the ashes. Not just a house, a real home with thick walls and glass windows and a porch that wrapped around 2 sides. The whole community pitched in, even Sheriff Coulter, though he mainly supervised rather than worked. During the construction, Samuel had time to think about the future. His wounds were healing well, though Dr. Williams said he'd always have the scars. The town was growing daily with talk of a school, a church, maybe even a railway spur eventually. The water flowed freely, managed by a commission that the 3 partners had a permanent voice in. But what about them? The 3 of them. The answer came one evening as they stood in their completed house. It was empty of furniture, but full of possibility. The sisters had been quiet all day, exchanging glances Samuel couldn't interpret. "We need to talk," Lydia said finally. "About what?" Though Samuel thought he knew. "About us. The 3 of us. This arrangement. It's not conventional," Anna added. "People already talk." "Let them talk," Samuel said. "It's not that simple." Lydia walked to the window, looking out at the growing town. "We're public figures now. What we do matters. How we live matters." "Then we live honestly," Samuel said. I care for both of you, differently but equally. I know that's not normal, but nothing about our situation is normal. And we care for you, Anna said softly. But Samuel, the world doesn't accept such arrangements, not openly. Then we make our own arrangements, private ones. What matters is what we know, what we feel, not what others see. The sisters looked at each other, having one of those silent conversations only twins could have. Finally, Lydia turned back to him. My father once told us about the old ways, our mother's Apache traditions. Sometimes a man would marry sisters. It was rare but not forbidden. The sisters would share the work, the children, the joys and sorrows. Is that what you're suggesting? Samuel asked carefully. We're suggesting, Anna said, that we stop pretending there's a choice to make. We're already bound together by this land, this water, this fight we've shared. Why not acknowledge what's already true? Samuel's heart was pounding. And you both want this. We want a life that's ours to define, Lydia said. A partnership in all things. The town won't accept it. Coulter definitely won't. Then we keep it private. Publicly, we're business partners. Privately, Anna smiled. Privately, we're whatever we choose to be. Samuel walked to them, took their hands. Then I choose this. Both of you. All of us. Together. Together. They agreed. That night, as they sat on their new porch watching the lights of the town twinkle below, Samuel thought about the strange journey that had brought them here. $22 for a ranch that came with a hanging woman. Now it was becoming the center of a new territory, possibly a new state. And he'd found something he hadn't even known he was looking for. Not just love, but partnership, purpose, belonging. What are you thinking? Lydia asked, leaning against his uninjured shoulder. I'm thinking your father would be proud. His dream is coming true. Different than he imagined, Anna said from his other side. But yes, I think he'd be proud. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their town grow. There would be challenges ahead, there always were in the frontier. Political battles over water rights, conflicts with larger interests who'd want to control what they'd found, the constant struggle to be accepted for who they were rather than what others expected them to be. But they'd face it all together. 3 unlikely partners bound by water and fire, by choice and chance by love, that didn't fit conventional shapes but was no less real for its strangeness. A rider appeared on the road carrying mail from Prescott. As he passed, he tossed a newspaper up to them. Samuel caught it, read the headline by lamplight. Arizona applies for statehood. Canesville water discovery cited as key economic factor. We did that, Anna said wonderingly. We're part of history. We're making history, Lydia corrected. Every day, every choice, every stand we take. Samuel set the newspaper aside and put his arms around both sisters. Then let's make it good history. The kind people will tell stories about. They already do, Anna said. I heard someone in town telling the story of how you cut me down from that rope. Only in their version you fought off 20 men to save me. 20? It was only 3. Stories grow in the telling, Lydia said. By next year it'll be 50 men and a bear. They laughed, and the sound carried across the desert. In the town below, people heard it and smiled. The Kane sisters and their partner Hayes, an odd arrangement certainly, but they'd brought water to the desert life, to the wasteland. If they wanted to live unconventionally well, this was the frontier. People came here to escape conventional. As the night deepened, they went inside their new home. There was still no furniture, just bedrolls on the floor, but that would change. Everything would change. The territory would become a state, the town would become a city, the desert would bloom with the water they'd protected and shared. But tonight they were just 3 people who'd found each other through violence and loss, who'd chosen to build something together that the world might not understand, but that felt absolutely right to them. Samuel's wounds ached as he lay down, but it was a good ache, the kind that reminded you of battles won of surviving, when survival seemed impossible. Lydia curled against his left side, careful of his shoulder. Anna settled on his right, her hand finding his in the darkness. Tell us about tomorrow, Anna said sleepily. What do we do tomorrow? Tomorrow, we start drilling more wells, Samuel said. We build irrigation channels. We help lay out the school. We meet with the territorial governor about water management. We live our lives without apology. And if people object, Lydia asked, if they try to separate us, then we remind them that we've survived hanging bullets fire and the Maddox family. We're not easily separated. No, both sisters said together. We're not. Outside, a coyote howled at the moon. The sound echoed across the desert wild and free. It was answered by another, then another, until the night was full of their song. The three partners listened to that ancient music, each thinking their own thoughts, but sharing the same contentment. They'd found their place unlikely as it was. They'd found their people unconventional as that was. They'd found their purpose in bringing water to the desert law, to the lawless civilization, to the wilderness. Most importantly, they'd found each other. The lamp burned low, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Soon they'd need to get furniture curtains, all the trappings of a proper home. They'd need to navigate the politics of a growing town, the complexities of their unusual arrangement, the constant challenges of frontier life. But that was tomorrow's concern. Tonight they were safe, they were together, and they were free to define their own happiness. As Samuel drifted towards sleep, surrounded by the warmth of the two remarkable women who'd chosen to share their lives with him, he thought about that $22 purchase that had started it all. Best investment he'd ever made, even if it had nearly killed him several times over. Samuel? Lydia's voice was soft in the darkness. Yeah. Thank you. For cutting that rope, for staying, for fighting. Thank you for letting me. We almost hanged you properly when you first showed up, Anna murmured. Thought you might be one of Harper's men. Good thing you didn't. Very good thing, both sisters agreed. The last lamp finally guttered out, leaving them in darkness lit only by stars visible through the windows. Somewhere in that darkness, their father's maps were safely stored, the secret of the water preserved for future generations. Somewhere the underground river flowed endlessly, bringing life to the desert. Somewhere their future waited to be built one day at a time. But here now in this moment, three unlikely partners held on to each other and knew they were exactly where they belonged. The frontier was hard, unforgiving, dangerous. It broke more people than it made. But sometimes rarely it brought together souls who might never have found each other in a more civilized world. $22 for a ranch that came with a hanging woman. $22 that had changed everything. $22 that had bought not just land, but love, purpose, and a future none of them could have imagined. As sleep finally took him, Samuel's last thought was of water. Endless, life-giving water flowing beneath the desert, waiting to transform the wasteland into paradise. They were the guardians of that transformation now, the three of them together. Whatever challenges tomorrow brought, they'd face them the same way they'd faced everything else together, without fear, without apology, without surrender. The desert wind whispered through the gaps in the walls, carrying the scent of sage and possibility. In the distance, the town slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that water would flow, that life would continue, that the future was bright as the desert stars. And in their new house, three partners slept entwined, their dreams mixing like underground streams, flowing together to create something greater than the sum of their parts. They'd written their own rules, created their own world, chosen their own happiness. In the morning, they'd continue building their empire of water and hope. But tonight, they simply held each other and were home. The sound of hammering woke them before dawn. Samuel opened his eyes to find both sisters already stirring, the three of them still entangled on the floor of their new home. Through the window, he could see workers already busy, the town that never seemed to sleep continuing its relentless growth. We need furniture, Anna said, practically stretching muscles sore from sleeping on hard boards. And proper beds, especially if we're going to keep this arrangement. The merchant wagon comes through today, Lydia added, already planning. We have credit at the bank now, thanks to the water rights income. It had been 2 weeks since Harper's death since they'd made their private commitment to each other. 2 weeks of carefully maintaining appearances during the day while sharing their true selves only in private. The strain was beginning to show not in conflict, but in the constant vigilance required. A knock at the door interrupted Samuel's thoughts. He grabbed his shirt, wincing as the movement pulled at his still healing wounds. Through the window, he saw Sheriff Coulter waiting on the porch, his expression unreadable as always. Sheriff, Samuel said, opening the door but not inviting him in. Early for a social call. Not social, I'm afraid. We've got trouble coming. Thought you should know first, given your situation. What kind of trouble? Coulter shifted uncomfortably. There's a federal inspector coming, Robert Whelan. He's been sent to review all water rights claims and town governance. Word is he's a moral crusader, likes to impose Eastern standards on Western towns. Samuel felt his stomach tighten. When? Tomorrow? Maybe the day after. He's already been through Prescott, left quite a stir. Shut down 3 saloons and had a woman arrested for wearing trousers. Anna and I always wear trousers when we're working, Lydia said from behind Samuel. She'd approached silently, already dressed for the day. I know, Coulter said, and for once, his tone held warning rather than judgment. That's why I'm here. Whelan has particular views about propriety, and he has the authority to revoke land claims if he finds what he calls moral turpitude. You're warning us? Anna asked, joining them. Why? Coulter was quiet for a moment, then said, because whatever I think of your arrangements, you've been good for this town. That water has brought prosperity to everyone. I'd hate to see some Eastern bureaucrat destroy that because he doesn't understand how things work out here. What do you suggest? Samuel asked. Be careful. Be conventional. And maybe, Coulter hesitated, maybe one of you should be elsewhere when he arrives. 3 unmarried adults sharing a house, even for business purposes, won't look right to his eyes. After Coulter left, they sat around their empty kitchen in silence. Finally, Anna spoke. He's right. We need to be smart about this. I won't hide what we are, Lydia said fiercely. Not hide, Samuel corrected. Protect. There's a difference. What we have is ours, but if we're not careful, we could lose everything the land, the water rights each other. They were still debating when another visitor arrived. This time it was Gregory Thornton looking harried. Have you heard about the inspector? Coulter just told us. It's worse than he knows. Whelan isn't just reviewing claims. He's been sent specifically to investigate reports of impropriety in the Territorial Water Commission. Someone wrote to Washington claiming corruption and moral decay. Who? Samuel demanded. My guess, someone from the Maddox family. They still have influence even from prison. This is their revenge. Samuel cursed. Even in defeat, the Maddox clan was dangerous. What can we do? Present a united, respectable front. I hate to say it, but Mr. Hayes, you might consider formally courting one of the Kane sisters. A proper engagement would silence many whispers. The 3 exchanged glances. It was logical advice, but it would mean choosing, at least publicly, the very thing they'd agreed they wouldn't do. We'll consider it, Samuel said carefully. After Thornton left, the day passed in tense preparation. They bought furniture from the merchant wagon, separate beds for appearance's sake, though they all knew where they'd actually sleep. They purchased proper Eastern clothes for the sisters, though both complained bitterly about the corsets and full skirts. That evening, as they arranged their new home to look as conventional as possible, a rider approached at full gallop. Samuel recognized one of Morrison's soldiers. Captain needs you at the fort. The soldier gasped. All 3 of you, urgent. They rode hard to Fort Buchanan, arriving to find Morrison pacing his office. We have a problem, he said without preamble. Thomas Maddox escaped during a prison transfer. What? Samuel stood so fast, his chair toppled. Help. Inside, help. Guards who were loyal to the family. He's disappeared into Mexico, but before he left, he sent letters. To newspapers, to Washington, to anyone who would listen. He's made serious accusations against you 3. What kind of accusations? Anna asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. Morrison looked uncomfortable. Improper relations. Witchcraft playing on your Apache heritage, Miss Kane. Claims that you used feminine wiles to steal his land and water rights. He's painted a picture of moral corruption that would make any inspector take notice. It's lies, Lydia said hotly. Of course it is. But lies with just enough truth twisted in them to be dangerous. You do all live together. You are unmarried. And, Morrison paused. Forgive me for saying so, but the affection between you 3 is rather obvious to anyone who looks. Samuel felt the walls closing in. They'd fought so hard for their freedom, their right to live as they chose, and now it was all at risk because of Eastern propriety and Maddox's revenge. There is one solution, Morrison said slowly. Marriage. If Mr. Hayes were to marry one of you immediately, it would diffuse much of the scandal. The other sister would be seen as a chaperone, a family member sharing the home. But which one? Anna asked quietly. How do we choose? You don't, Morrison said. I've seen how you three operate. You don't have to choose, just choose who signs the paper. Samuel looked at him sharply. You know. I'm not blind, Mr. Hayes, neither are most folks around here, but there's a difference between knowing and acknowledging. If there's a legal marriage, people will ignore what they choose to ignore. Without it, he shrugged. Inspector Whelan won't ignore anything. They rode back to town in darkness, each lost in thought. The solution seemed simple enough, a quick marriage to satisfy propriety. But which sister? And what would it mean for the other? We could flip a coin, Anna suggested with bitter humor. We could leave, Lydia countered. Take the money we've earned and go somewhere else. California maybe, or Colorado. And abandon the water, the town. Everything your father dreamed of. Samuel shook his head. That's not happening. They were still arguing when they reached their house to find an unexpected visitor waiting on the porch. An elderly Apache woman dressed in traditional clothing, her face weathered by decades of desert sun. Grandmother, both sisters said in unison. The old woman smiled. Nigya Niyel, my granddaughters, I have come to see this water you have found, and to meet this white man who thinks he can love you both. Samuel felt himself being measured by eyes that had seen more than he could imagine. Ma'am, he said respectfully. You cut my granddaughter from the rope, she said. You breathed life back into her, in the old way that makes you responsible for that life. I was glad to help. Help? She laughed, a sound like wind through canyon walls. Is that what you call it? You have bound yourself to both my granddaughters, taken them both as wives in your heart, if not in law. Do you know what that means? I know I love them both. Love. She spoke the word like it was new to her. White men speak of love like it's simple. Apache know better. Love is responsibility, sacrifice, choosing every day to put another's needs before your own. Can you do that for one woman, let alone two? I can try. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. You'll do. She turned to her granddaughters. You have a problem, yes. This inspector who comes to judge you. How did you know? Anna asked. I know many things. I also know solutions your white law doesn't. She pulled something from her bag, a leather cord with beads. Tomorrow at sunrise, you three will come to the old rocks, the ones that look like praying hands. We will perform the ceremony. What ceremony? Lydia asked. The old marriage ceremony, the one that binds not just two but three when the spirits allow. It won't be recognized by white law, but it will be true in the eyes of the people and the spirits. Grandmother, that's not... Then after one of you will marry this man in the white way, for the papers for the inspector, but all three will know the truth of what you are to each other. Samuel felt hope stir. Would that work? It has worked before. Not often, but when the need is great and the hearts are true. She looked at each of them in turn. The question is, do you have the courage to be what you truly are, even if the world sees only what it wants to see? They exchanged glances, and Samuel saw the same determination in both sisters' eyes that he felt in his heart. Yes, they said together. The old woman smiled. Then be at the rocks at first light. Bring offerings water from your well earth, from your land, something that represents your bond. She left as mysteriously as she'd come, disappearing into the darkness, on foot despite their offers of a horse or escort. The three stood on their porch, processing what had just happened. Did your grandmother just offer to marry us? Samuel asked. All of us. The old ways recognize what the new laws don't, Anna said. That love doesn't always follow rules. But we'll still need the legal marriage, Lydia pointed out, for the inspector. Samuel took their hands. Then we do both. The true ceremony for us, the legal one, for the world. But which of us? Anna asked. For the legal marriage? They were quiet for a moment, then Lydia spoke. Anna. It should be Anna. What know you're the older? By 3 minutes. But you're the one who almost died. The one Samuel saved first. It makes sense to the story people already tell. Anna looked at Samuel. Is that what you want? I want you both. The paper doesn't change that. They spent the night gathering the offerings the grandmother had requested. Water from the deep well soil from the land where the house stood, and after much debate, the rope that had nearly killed Anna transformed from an instrument of death to a symbol of life saved and love found. Before dawn, they rode to the ancient rock formation. The grandmother was already there along with 2 other Apache elders. A small fire burned between the rocks, its smoke rising straight up in the still air. You came, the grandmother said. Good. The spirits are watching. The ceremony was unlike anything Samuel had experienced. They sat in a circle passing a pipe sharing water from a single cup. The grandmother spoke in Apache, her words rhythmic and hypnotic. She bound their hands together with the rope, all 3 hands intertwined, and sang something that sounded older than the rocks themselves. Now speak your truths, she said, switching to English. What you are to each other. Samuel looked at both sisters, their faces painted with sacred designs, beautiful and fierce in the firelight. You are my heart, he said simply. Both of you. Different chambers of the same heart. I promise to protect you, provide for you, stand with you against any enemy. I promise to love you equally without favoritism, without jealousy, until my last breath. Anna spoke next, her voice clear. You are my strength, both of you. Samuel, you gave me back my life. Lydia, you've shared that life since before we were born. I promise to be faithful, to be honest, to build our home with joy and without resentment. I promise to love openly, even when the world demands we hide. Lydia's green eyes glistened with unshed tears. You are my destiny, both of you. Everything that's happened led us to this moment. I promise to be brave, to fight for our right to exist as we choose to never let convention destroy what we've built. I promise to love without fear. The grandmother nodded, satisfied. She took dirt and made marks on their foreheads, then had them drink again from the shared cup. By the old laws, the true laws, you are now bound. 3 souls, 1 path. The spirits have witnessed. The land has accepted. Go now, and face your white man's law, knowing that what truly matters has already been sealed. As the sun rose, fully painting the desert gold, they rode back to town. The transformation felt profound. Samuel could swear he felt different, like something fundamental had shifted. The sisters seemed to glow with an inner light, their usual beauty magnified by the ceremony's power. Sheriff Coulter was waiting at their house. The inspector's here, arrived an hour ago. He's already asking questions. Then we should introduce ourselves, Samuel said calmly. First, Anna said, we need to visit Judge Conway. Coulter's eyes widened with understanding. You're getting married now. Within the hour, Samuel confirmed. Will you stand as witness? The sheriff looked between the 3 of them, and Samuel could see him noting their joined hands, the ceremonial marks still faintly visible on their skin. All right, he said finally. But wash your faces first, and Miss Lydia, you'll stand as your sister's witness. Of course. Judge Conway was surprised, but willing. The ceremony was brief legal binding in the eyes of the law, if not complete in the eyes of the heart. But that was fine, the real ceremony had already happened. As they signed the papers, Anna officially becoming Anna Hayes, the door burst open. A man stood there, thin, severe, with the pinched look of someone who'd found life consistently disappointing. I am Inspector Robert Whelan, he announced. I understand this is the couple accused of moral impropriety. This is Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, Judge Conway said firmly, legally married as of this moment, and Miss Lydia Kane, Mrs. Hayes' sister and business partner. Whelan's eyes narrowed. How convenient. Married just as I arrive. We've been planning this for weeks, Samuel lied smoothly. Ask anyone in town. I shall. And I'll be investigating every aspect of your water rights claim, your living arrangements, everything. He looked at Lydia with particular suspicion. You all share the same house. It's a large house, Anna said calmly. My sister has her own room, of course. It's perfectly proper. We shall see about that. The next 3 days were torture. Whelan investigated everything, interviewed everyone, searched for any hint of impropriety. He was particularly fixated on the Apache ceremony, which several people had seen them leave for. Pagan rituals, he said with disgust. Heathen practices. Cultural traditions, Samuel corrected. My wife wished to honor her heritage alongside our Christian marriage. Surely there's no law against that. Whelan clearly wanted to find fault, but couldn't. The marriage was legal, the water rights were properly filed, the business arrangements were legitimate. The town, even those who privately disapproved of the unusual arrangement, closed ranks against the outsider. Even Sheriff Coulter vouched for their propriety. They're good people, Coulter told Whelan. They've brought prosperity to this town, law and order. Whatever you might think of their closeness, they've done nothing improper. Finally frustrated and finding nothing actionable, Whelan prepared to leave. But he had one last card to play. There's still the matter of these accusations, he said, pulling out Maddox's letters. Serious allegations of witchcraft, seduction, theft. Made by a convicted criminal who escaped federal custody, Captain Morrison said, arriving just in time. A man with every reason to lie and no credibility whatsoever. In fact, Inspector, I'm curious how you came to possess letters from a federal fugitive. That might warrant investigation itself. Whelan went pale. They were sent to my office, and you didn't immediately report communication from an escaped prisoner. That's troubling, Inspector. Very troubling. Faced with having his own conduct questioned, Whelan retreated. He left town that afternoon, his report ultimately stating that while the situation in Canesville was unconventional, he found no evidence of illegality or impropriety that would warrant federal intervention. That night, the three partners celebrated privately in their home. The inspector was gone. The threat passed their secret safe. But Samuel could see something had changed in both sisters' eyes. "What is it?" he asked as they sat together on their bed. They'd pushed all three beds together once Whelan left, creating one large sleeping space. "We're tired of hiding," Lydia said. "Tired of pretending." "The ceremony with grandmother, it made us realize something," Anna added. "We are what we are. The three of us bound together. Why should we hide that?" "Because the world won't accept it," Samuel said gently. "Our part of the world might," Lydia countered. "This is the frontier. People come here to escape conventional lives. Why not us?" Before Samuel could answer, they heard gunshots from the town. They grabbed their weapons and ran outside to find chaos in the streets. Buildings were on fire, people were screaming, and riders were shooting at anything that moved. "Maddox!" someone shouted. "Thomas Maddox is back!" Samuel's blood went cold. They'd assumed Maddox had fled to Mexico for good, but apparently he'd only gone to gather men. Now he was back for revenge. The water station, Anna realized. He's going for the main pump station. They ran through the burning streets, dodging gunfire and panicked citizens. The pump station that controlled water distribution to the entire town was under attack. If Maddox destroyed it, Canesville would die of thirst within days. They arrived to find a battle in progress. Sheriff Coulter and a handful of deputies were pinned down behind water barrels while Maddox's men poured fire into their position. Maddox himself stood by the pump mechanism with a bundle of dynamite preparing to destroy everything they'd built. "Stop!" Lydia shouted, stepping into the open. Maddox turned, his face twisted with hate. "The Witch Sisters and their pet killer. Come to watch your dream die." "This won't bring back your empire," Anna said, moving to stand beside her sister. "No, but it'll destroy yours." Maddox lit the dynamite fuse. 30 seconds until this all goes to hell. Samuel didn't think, just moved. He charged across the open ground as bullets flew around him. One caught him in the thigh, but he kept going. He slammed into Maddox, both men going down hard. The dynamite flew from Maddox's hands, its fuse still burning. Anna ran for the dynamite while Lydia provided covering fire with deadly accuracy. Samuel and Maddox rolled in the dirt, fighting for control. Maddox was bigger, but Samuel was desperate. He could see Anna trying to pull the fuse from the dynamite bundle, could hear Lydia's rifle keeping Maddox's men at bay. "You ruined everything!" Maddox roared, his hands around Samuel's throat. Samuel's vision was going black when he heard the shot. Maddox's grip loosened and the big man toppled sideways. Sheriff Coulter stood there, smoking gun in hand. "Nobody destroys my town," Coulter said simply. Anna had managed to extract the fuse with seconds to spare. The remaining outlaws, seeing their leader fall, threw down their weapons. The battle was over. As Dr. Williams patched up Samuel's leg, another scar to add to his collection, the town gathered around the pump station. The damage was minimal, the water still flowed, but everyone knew how close they'd come to disaster. "We need better defenses," Thornton said. "A real sheriff's office, maybe even a town militia." "We need more than that," Samuel said, an idea forming. "We need to incorporate, become a real town with a real government, strong enough that no single man can threaten us again." "Who would be mayor?" someone asked. Everyone looked at Samuel and the sisters. "Not me," Samuel said quickly. "But I nominate Gregory Thornton. He's been managing things well enough already." "I second that," Lydia said. The vote was unanimous. Canesville officially became an incorporated town that night with duly elected officials and plans for proper infrastructure. The water rights were formally transferred to the town trust, with the founding partners retaining their management roles but no longer sole owners. "You're giving up a fortune," Coulter told them later. "We're investing in a future," Anna corrected. "Our father's dream wasn't to get rich. It was to see the desert bloom." As the weeks passed and the town rebuilt from Maddox's attack, something subtle shifted in how people treated the three partners. The shared danger had bonded everyone, made them protective of their own, however unconventional they might be. Nobody said anything directly, but Samuel noticed the knowing smiles, the way people said, "the Hayeses and Miss Kane," with a particular emphasis that included all three. One evening, as they watched the sunset from their porch, Judge Conway paid them a visit. "I've been thinking," he said without preamble, "about documentation, legal matters." "Judge," Samuel asked warily, "if something were to happen to you, Mr. Hayes, your wife would inherit. But Miss Lydia would have no legal standing despite being an equal partner in everything but law." He pulled out some papers. "I've drawn up documents, business partnership agreements, power of attorney, medical decision rights, all perfectly legal, all ensuring that regardless of what the law recognizes about your relationship, all three of you are protected." Samuel took the papers, touched by the gesture. "Thank you, Judge." Conway cleared his throat. "I've lived in the West for 30 years. I've seen all manner of arrangements that wouldn't pass muster back east. What matters here is that people keep their word, protect their community, and live with honor. You three have done all that and more." As fall turned to winter, the town thrived. The railroad announced plans for a spur line to Canesville. The territorial government approved funding for a school. Families arrived daily, drawn by the promise of water and opportunity. The three partners adapted to their new reality, publicly accepted, if not officially acknowledged, their unusual bond, an open secret that the town protected from outsiders. They worked the water rights, managed distribution, helped newcomers establish homesteads. They were the heart of Canesville, the three who'd made it all possible. One cold December morning, Anna made an announcement that changed everything again. "I'm pregnant." Samuel nearly dropped his coffee cup. Lydia went very still. "You're certain?" "Dr. Williams confirmed it yesterday." Anna's hand went to her still flat stomach. "Due in summer." The implications hung in the air. A child would make their arrangement even more complex, more visible. But as Samuel looked at both sisters, his wives, in every way that mattered, he felt only joy. "We're having a baby," he said, pulling Anna into his arms, then reaching for Lydia. "All of us." "All of us," Lydia agreed, though Samuel could see the uncertainty in her eyes. Not jealousy, they'd moved past that, but concern for how this would change things. Their grandmother visited again when she heard the news. "The spirits have blessed you," she said simply. "This child will bind you further, not divide you, but Niall." She looked at Lydia. "Your time will come too, the spirits promise." As Anna's pregnancy progressed, the town rallied around them. Baby gifts arrived daily. The women organized a sewing circle to make clothes and blankets. Even Sheriff Coulter carved a wooden rattle, presenting it gruffly with warnings about proper child rearing. But with joy came danger. Word reached them that Thomas Maddox's surviving sons, who'd been back east during their father's downfall, were returning to Arizona. They'd sworn vengeance for their father's death and their family's destruction. "Let them come," Samuel said grimly, checking his guns. "You can't fight everyone forever. Anna set her hand on her swollen belly. We have more to protect now. She was right. They needed a permanent solution not just to the Maddox threat, but to all future threats. Samuel wrote to Washington, to the territorial governor, to anyone with influence. He called in favors from his war days, contacted men he'd served with who'd gone into politics or law. The response came in the form of a federal marshal named James Thornfield, a man Samuel had known in the war. "Got your letter," Thornfield said, stepping off the stage. "Seems you've been busy since mustering out." "You could say that." Thornfield looked at the thriving town, at the pregnant Anna, and protective Lydia, at the way the three moved in unconscious harmony. "Interesting situation you have here. Is that a problem?" "Not for me. I've seen stranger things. But these Maddox boys, they're my problem. They've been leaving a trail of death from Texas to here. Bank robbery, murder, assault. They're wanted federal fugitives now. So you'll arrest them. If they show up here, yes. But Samuel..." Thornfield's expression grew serious. "They've put out word. They're offering $1,000 to anyone who kills you or the sisters. That's enough to tempt a lot of desperate men." The threat hung over them like a storm cloud as spring arrived. They took precautions, never traveling alone, keeping weapons close, varying their routines. The town established a watch system, neighbors looking out for neighbors, but they couldn't live in fear forever. The attack came on a peaceful Sunday morning. Anna was in her 8th month, moving slowly but still insisting on working. They were at the pump station checking pressure readings when riders appeared on the horizon. "How many?" Lydia asked, shading her eyes. 6, maybe 7. Samuel counted. Armed. They retreated to the fortified station building, sending a runner for help. Through the gun slots, they watched the riders approach. The Maddox brothers were easy to spot. They had their father's build and cruel faces. "Samuel Hayes," the elder brother called, "we've come for justice." "Your father got justice," Samuel called back. "He died attacking innocent people. He died defending what was his." "What he stole, you mean?" The younger brother spoke up. "Doesn't matter now. You killed him, you'll pay. But we're reasonable men. Send out the Apache witches, and you can walk away." Samuel's response was a rifle shot that took the hat off the elder brother's head. "That's my answer." The siege began. The brothers had learned from their father's mistakes. They didn't charge foolishly. Instead, they settled in for a long fight, taking cover behind rocks and wagons, sending probing shots to test defenses. "They're waiting for dark," Anna said, wincing as the baby kicked. "They'll rush us then." "Help will come before that," Lydia assured her, but Samuel could hear the doubt. Hours passed. The sun climbed high, then began to sink. No help came. Later, they'd learned the runner had been captured, the message never delivered. The town didn't know they were under attack. As shadows lengthened, Samuel made a decision. "I'm going out." "No," both sisters said immediately. "Listen to me. They want me most of all. If I go out, draw them off, you two can escape. Get to town. Get help." "We're not leaving you," Anna said firmly, despite her condition. "Anna, you're about to have a baby. Our baby. That's more important than..." His words were cut off by Anna's gasp. She doubled over, water spreading beneath her skirts. "The baby's coming," she said through gritted teeth. "Now." Samuel felt panic rise. They were trapped in a siege with killers outside, and Anna was going into labor. Lydia immediately took charge, her grandmother's training showing. "Samuel, keep watching. I'll handle this. But I've delivered babies before. Keep us safe." So began the longest night of Samuel's life. He fired at shadows and sounds, while behind him Anna's labor progressed. Her muffled cries of pain tore at him, but he couldn't turn from his post. The Maddox brothers kept testing their defenses, looking for weakness. "Push," Lydia commanded. "Anna, you have to push." "I can't." "You can. You're the strongest woman I know. Push." A rifle bullet shattered the window above Samuel's head. He returned fire, heard a curse outside. One hit may be wounded, but there were still too many. Then, cutting through the gunfire and Anna's struggles, came a new sound. A baby's cry, strong and clear. "It's a girl," Lydia said, tears in her voice. "A perfect girl." Samuel risked a glance back. Anna held a tiny bundle, her face exhausted but radiant. The baby had her mother's dark hair already thick, and when she opened her eyes, they were gray like Samuel's. "She's beautiful," he said, then had to turn back as more shots peppered their shelter. "We need to get them out of here," Lydia said urgently. "Anna needs proper care and the baby." She was interrupted by a new voice outside. "Federal Marshal, everyone, cease fire." James Thornfield had arrived with a full posse. The Maddox brothers tried to flee but were quickly surrounded. In minutes, it was over. The brothers were in chains, their hired guns dead or captured. Dr. Williams arrived to tend to Anna and the baby. "Born in a gunfight," he said, shaking his head. "This one's going to be tough." "She'd have to be," Anna said weakly. "Look at her parents." "All three of them," Lydia added quietly, her hand on the baby's head. "They named her Mary, after the grandmother's Apache name, Maria. The town celebrated her birth like she was everyone's child, which in a way she was. The first true child of Canesville born of its founding family. The Maddox brothers were tried and hanged for their crimes. With their deaths, the last threat to the town's peace died too. Canesville continued to grow. The railroad arrived and the desert did indeed bloom as Anna and Lydia's father had dreamed. As summer turned to fall, Samuel stood on the porch of their home, now expanded with the nursery, watching the sunset. Anna sat in a rocking chair nursing Mary. Lydia leaned against the railing, her hand unconsciously resting on her own slightly rounded belly, the grandmother's prophecy proving true. "No regrets?" Anna asked, looking at Samuel. He thought about the journey that had brought them here. $22 for a ranch with a hanging woman. Now they had a thriving town, a unique family, and a future bright with possibility. "Not one," he said, kissing Anna's forehead, then Lydia's. "Not a single one." Sheriff Coulter rode by, tipped his hat. "Evening, folks." "Evening, Sheriff." "Quiet night." "The best kind." As Coulter rode on, Samuel reflected on how much had changed. The sheriff who'd once suspected them now protected them. The town that might have rejected them had embraced them. Their unconventional love had become Canesville's open secret, a source of local pride, even the three who'd brought water to the desert and refused to let convention dictate their happiness. "Samuel," Lydia said, "I've been thinking about something grandmother said, about the old ways and the new. What about them? Maybe we're not choosing between them. Maybe we're creating something different, a third way." "Our way," Anna agreed, shifting Mary to her other breast. "Our way," Samuel repeated, liking the sound of it. As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, the three partners sat together, their children born and unborn, safe in their arms. They'd fought for this peace, bled for it, nearly died for it. But they'd won. Not just the land or the water, but the right to love as they chose to live as they wanted to build a family that didn't fit any conventional mold but was perfect for them. The sound of laughter drifted from the town, someone celebrating something the way people did now that water flowed freely and fear had faded. Samuel pulled both his wives closer, felt Anna lean into him while Lydia's hand found his. "Tell Mary a story," Anna said sleepily, "about how her parents met." Samuel looked down at his daughter, her gray eyes wide and alert despite her young age. "Well, little one, it started with $22 and some very bad judgment on my part." He told the story as the night deepened, editing out the violence for innocent ears, focusing on the bravery and love. How her mother had survived a hanging. How her other mother had outsmarted villains. How their father had fought overwhelming odds for what was right. "And then," Lydia prompted when he paused, "and then we built this town. We brought water to the desert. We made a place where families like ours could exist, where love matters more than convention, where courage counts more than conformity." "It's a good story," Anna murmured, already half asleep. "The best part," Samuel said, "is that it's just the beginning." Mary's first cry in the middle of the night woke all three of them, as it had every night for the past 2 months. But this time it was different. The cry cut off abruptly, replaced by an ominous silence. Samuel was out of bed, first rifle in hand, before his feet hit the floor. The instincts that had kept him alive through war and frontier violence screamed danger. Lydia, now 7 months pregnant, reached for the shotgun while Anna rushed to the nursery. "She's gone!" Anna's terrified voice shattered the night. Samuel burst into the nursery to find the window open, curtains billowing in the desert wind. Mary's crib was empty, a piece of paper pinned to her blanket. If you want the child alive, bring the water rights documents to Skeleton Canyon at noon tomorrow. Come alone, all three of you, or she dies. It wasn't signed, but Samuel recognized the handwriting. His blood went cold. Marcus Finch. The man who sold you the ranch, Lydia asked, reading over his shoulder. The man who supposedly sold me the ranch? But if he's alive, then the whole thing was a setup from the beginning. Anna finished, her face pale with rage and fear. The Maddox family, the cheap price, all of it. Samuel's mind raced. Marcus Finch, if that was even his real name, had been the phantom seller who'd disappeared after the transaction. They'd assumed he was fictional, created by the Maddox family for their fraud. But if he was real, if he'd been playing a longer game... We have to go, Anna said, already reaching for her clothes. It's a trap, Lydia protested. Skeleton Canyon is perfect for an ambush. Narrow passages, high walls, dozens of places to hide shooters. I don't care if it's the gates of hell, Anna said fiercely. They have our daughter. Samuel caught her hands. We'll get her back. But we do this smart. Lydia's right, walking into Skeleton Canyon is suicide. Then what do you suggest? Before Samuel could answer, they heard horses approaching. Many horses. Samuel peered out the window to see Sheriff Coulter leading what looked like half the town's men, all armed. Heard there was trouble, Coulter said when Samuel opened the door. Mrs. Morrison saw someone climbing out your window with a bundle. By the time she raised the alarm, they were gone. They took Mary, Samuel said simply. The sheriff's face hardened. Then we ride. Every man here will... No. Samuel showed him the note. They'll kill her if we don't come alone. That's what they always say. Doesn't mean it's true. Are you willing to gamble my daughter's life on that? Anna demanded. Coulter fell silent. Around him, the assembled townsmen muttered angrily. These people had celebrated Mary's birth, brought gifts, considered her part of their extended family. The thought of her in danger enraged them all. There might be another way, a voice said from the crowd. James Thornfield pushed forward. The federal marshal had stayed in town after the Maddox brothers' execution, claiming he liked the climate. Skeleton Canyon runs for miles. They'll expect you to come from the south, the main entrance. But there's another way in from the north through Apache territory. The Apache don't let anyone through there, Coulter said. They might let family through, Lydia said, slowly looking at her grandmother's house in the distance. If we asked the right way. Samuel felt hope stir. You and Anna go to your grandmother. Ask for passage and help. Meanwhile, We all go, Anna interrupted. The note said all three. If Marcus Finch is watching, if he doesn't see all of us leave together, Mary dies. She was right. They'd have to move together, at least at first. Samuel turned to Thornfield. Can you track us? Stay far enough back that you're not seen, but close enough to help. I can. But Samuel, if this goes bad, you make sure that bastard doesn't leave the canyon alive. They prepared quickly but carefully. Weapons hidden but accessible. The water rights documents in a leather satchel, the real ones, not copies. They couldn't risk Mary's life with forgeries. As the sun rose, painting the desert gold and red, the three partners mounted their horses. We'll get her back, one, Samuel told Anna, seeing the terror she was trying to hide. I know, she said, but her voice shook. I just keep thinking about her crying, wondering where we are, why we're not coming. Don't, Lydia said firmly. That way lies madness. Focus on what we need to do. They rode out together, very aware of the eyes watching them. The town wanted to help, but was held back by the threat to Mary's life. Samuel could feel their frustration, their anger. Canesville protected its own, and someone had violated that protection. 2 hours into their ride, they reached the fork where the trail to Apache territory split from the main road. Samuel made a show of checking the sun as if confirming direction, then led them north instead of south. If Finch has watchers, they'll report this, Anna worried. Let them. We're still heading to Skeleton Canyon, just taking the long way. The Apache scouts found them an hour later, materializing from the desert like ghosts. Samuel kept his hands visible but away from his weapons. These were Lydia and Anna's mother's people, but that guaranteed nothing. We need to see the grandmother, Lydia said in Apache. It's urgent. About the child. The scouts conferred, then one gestured for them to follow. They were led to a small camp hidden in a box canyon where the grandmother sat by a fire despite the warming day. I dreamed of this, she said without preamble. The child's stolen the trap waiting. You've come for help. We need passage through your territory to the north entrance of Skeleton Canyon, Samuel said, and, if possible, warriors. The grandmother smiled grimly. The one who took the child violated more than your home. He crossed Apache land without permission, left sign of his passing. This is as much our business as yours. She called out in Apache, and suddenly the camp was full of armed warriors painted for war. Samuel counted at least 20, all armed with rifles as well as traditional weapons. My sons, the grandmother said, indicating two fierce-looking men. Your wife's uncles, though they've never claimed it before. Today they will. The taller uncle spoke his English accented but clear. We know Skeleton Canyon better than any white man. There are paths through the rocks places to position shooters. This Finch expects you to be alone and vulnerable. He'll find otherwise. The child, Anna said desperately. We can't risk. The child is already at risk, the grandmother interrupted. This man, this Finch, he doesn't plan to return her regardless. I've seen his type before. He wants everything the water rights revenge your deaths. He'll promise anything and deliver nothing. Samuel's blood chilled. He'd suspected the same, but hadn't wanted to voice it in front of Anna. Then we need to be smart. Fast. We'll position our warriors before you arrive, the shorter uncle said. Hidden in the rocks. You'll go in as demanded, seem to comply. When the moment comes when we can strike without risking the child, we will. They spent the next hour planning the Apache warriors, sketching canyon layouts in the dirt, marking positions and escape routes. The grandmother mixed something in a small bowl, war paint, she said, for protection. She marked each of their faces, whispering prayers in Apache. Your daughter is strong, she told Anna. She has the blood of survivors. She will come through this. As they prepared to leave, the grandmother pulled Samuel aside. There's something else. This Finch, I've heard that name before. Years ago, a man came through our territory asking about water, about hidden places. We drove him off, but not before he saw things. Maps in our keeping, old Spanish maps showing water throughout the territory. You think he's been planning this for years? I think he's been searching for the water your father-in-law found. When he learned of the discovery, he set his trap using the Maddox family as tools. They thought they were the predators, but they were just bait. The implication was staggering. Everything, the violence, the deaths, the battles had been orchestrated by one man's greed. Samuel felt rage building cold and focused. This man had taken his daughter. There would be a reckoning. They rode hard for Skeleton Canyon, the Apache warriors disappearing into the landscape, invisible but present. As they neared the southern entrance, Samuel saw dust rising, Thornfield and his posse staying back but ready. Skeleton Canyon earned its name from the bones that littered its floor, cattle and horses mostly, but humans too. Victims of Apache raids and outlaw ambushes. The narrow passage wound between towering red rocks, sometimes barely wide enough for a single horse. Perfect killing ground, Lydia murmured. They entered slowly, watchfully. The canyon twisted and turned, each bend a potential ambush site. Samuel's neck prickled with the sensation of being watched. Rifle sights were probably trained on them right now. After what felt like hours, but was probably 30 minutes, the canyon opened into a wider bowl surrounded by cliff walls. In the center, a man stood next to a small tent. He was older than Samuel had expected, perhaps 60, with silver hair and the kind of soft look that came from hiring others to do violence. In his arms was Mary. Anna made a sound like a wounded animal. Samuel caught her arm, keeping her from charging forward. Mary appeared unharmed, but was crying, her little face red with distress. Mr. Hayes, Finch called out pleasantly, as if they were meeting for tea, and the lovely Kane sisters, so good of you to come. Let the child go, Samuel said, dismounting slowly. Of course, as soon as you hand over the documents, and your weapons. Can't be too careful. They dismounted, placed their visible weapons on the ground. The documents were in the saddlebag, and Samuel made a show of retrieving them. All the while his eyes scanned the cliff walls, looking for the Apache warriors for any sign of help. Bring them here, Finch instructed. Just you, Hayes, the women stay back. Samuel walked forward, the documents in hand. As he got closer, he could see Mary more clearly. She was reaching out, recognizing him, her cries becoming more desperate. "She's hungry," Finch said conversationally. "Haven't been able to feed her properly. Cow's milk doesn't seem to agree with her." Samuel felt his rage threaten to break free. This man had kept his infant daughter hungry for hours, using her suffering as a weapon. "The documents for the child." "Oh, I don't think so." Finch smiled. "You see, I need more than just the papers. I need you three dead. Can't have you causing trouble later, claiming the transfer was forced. No, this needs to be clean. You'll sign the papers over willingly, then, unfortunately, be killed by Apache raiders on your way home. Tragic, really." "The Apache don't raid anymore," Lydia called out. "No, well, perhaps these will." Finch whistled sharply. Men emerged from hiding spots in the rocks, not Apache, but white men dressed as Apache, their faces painted in crude imitation of native designs. Samuel counted 6, maybe 7, all armed. "Cheap theatrics," Samuel said, though his heart was racing. Where were the real Apache? Where was Thornfield? Effective theatrics. When your bodies are found full of Apache arrows, who will question it? Everyone knows the sisters are mixed blood. A family dispute, perhaps. Very sad. "You've thought of everything," Samuel said, playing for time. "I've had years to plan, ever since I first heard rumors of water in this godforsaken desert. The Maddox family were useful idiots, so focused on their petty empire, they never saw the bigger picture. With the water rights and the railroad coming, I'll make millions." "And murder a child?" Finch shrugged. "Unfortunate necessity. Can't have loose ends." That's when Samuel saw it movement in the rocks above. Just a flash, but enough. The Apache were in position. But Mary was still in Finch's arms, still in danger. "At least let my wife feed her first," Samuel said. "You want those papers signed willingly? Show some mercy to the child." Finch considered, then nodded. "Very well. The mother can approach, but slowly." Anna walked forward, her arms outstretched for Mary. The baby's cries intensified, recognizing her mother. As Anna got close, Finch held out the child, then suddenly pulled a knife, pressing it to Mary's throat. "Sign the papers first," he said, his pleasant mask finally slipping. That's when everything happened at once. Lydia, who'd been forgotten as the less dangerous sister, pulled the hidden derringer from her boot and fired. The bullet caught Finch in the shoulder, spinning him around. Mary fell from his arms, but Anna was there, diving to catch her daughter before she hit the ground. The fake Apache opened fire, but the real Apache responded from the rocks above. Arrows and bullets rained down on Finch's men. Samuel rolled behind a boulder, came up with the hidden gun from his boot, started shooting. Finch, wounded but not dead, crawled toward his tent, where presumably more weapons waited. Samuel went after him, tackling the older man just as he reached for a rifle. They struggled, Finch surprisingly strong for his age and soft appearance. "You don't understand," Finch gasped as they fought. "The water, it's worth more than gold, more than anything." "Not more than my daughter's life," Samuel said, and drove his fist into Finch's face. The fight in the canyon was brief but vicious. The fake Apache caught between the real warriors above, and Thornfield's posse charging in from the south didn't last long. Within minutes, it was over. Finch's men were dead or captured, and Finch himself lay unconscious, blood seeping from his shoulder. Anna sat in the dust crying as she nursed Mary, who latched on desperately. Lydia knelt beside them, her derringer still in her hand, watching for any remaining threat. Samuel stood over Finch, fighting the urge to put a bullet in the man's head. "Don't," Thornfield said, appearing beside him. "He'll hang for this. Kidnapping, attempted murder conspiracy. Let the law have him." The law failed before. The Maddox family were local. This man crossed state lines, made this federal. He'll hang Samuel, I promise you that. The Apache warriors emerged from their positions, their grandmother's sons approaching the three partners. "The debt is settled," the taller one said. "You are family, true family. The child will carry our protection always." As they prepared to leave the canyon, Finch regained consciousness. Thornfield had him in irons ready for transport, but the man still had words to spit. "You don't know what you've done," he said. "That water could have built an empire, could have made Arizona the jewel of the West. Instead, you'll waste it on farmers and small towns." We'll share it, Samuel said, with everyone who needs it. That's the difference between us, Finch. You see empire. We see community. Fools, you're all fools. That water is worth millions and you're giving it away. No, Anna said, standing with Mary safe in her arms. We're investing it. In the future and our children, in the dream of a desert that blooms for everyone, not just the wealthy. Finch laughed bitterly. You'll regret this. Others will come. That much water, that much potential wealth. It's a magnet for men like me. Then we'll be ready, Lydia said. We've faced the Maddox family. We've faced you. We'll face whoever comes next. This is our home, our stand. As they rode out of Skeleton Canyon, Mary sleeping peacefully in Anna's arms, Samuel looked back at the scene of what could have been tragedy. The fake Apache bodies were being gathered, Finch was secured for transport, and the real Apache were melting back into the desert their justice delivered. You knew, Samuel said to the grandmother when they stopped at her camp. You knew it would work out. I hoped, she corrected. The spirit showed me possibilities, not certainties, but you three are stronger together than any enemy apart. Remember that. Back in Canesville, the town erupted in celebration when they returned with Mary safe. People poured out of buildings cheering and crying. The baby was passed from arm to arm, everyone needing to see for themselves that she was unharmed. That night, after the celebrating died down and Mary slept safely in her crib, with 2 armed guards outside the house at the town's insistence, the 3 partners finally had time to process what had happened. He's right, you know, Lydia said quietly. Others will come. The water is too valuable to be left alone. Then we make ourselves too strong to attack, Samuel said. We build alliances, we create legal protections, we make Canesville indispensable to the territory. How? We've already started. The town loves Mary. She's their symbol now, the child who was stolen and returned. That gives us emotional protection. Thornfield's federal authority gives us legal protection. The Apache Alliance gives us military protection. And the water itself gives us economic protection, Anna added, understanding. We control something everyone needs. As long as we're fair, as long as we share, we'll have allies. Over the following weeks, they formalized these protections. The water rights were transferred to a trust with the 3 partners as permanent trustees, but the town council having a voice. The federal government established a permanent marshal's office in Canesville. The Apache signed a formal treaty recognizing the town and establishing trade relationships. But the most important change was personal. I want to make it official, Samuel said one evening. All of it. It can't be official, Anna reminded him. The law doesn't recognize, not legally, but in every other way. He pulled out 3 rings, simple gold bands. In some states, common law marriage is recognized. Live as husband and wife long enough and you are. We'll wear these rings, all 3 of us. Let people think what they want. Samuel, Lydia started, I almost lost you both. Almost lost Mary. I don't want to hide anymore. I don't want to pretend that what we have is less than what it is. They exchanged rings that night in their home with Mary as witness. It wasn't legal, wasn't recognized by any authority, but their own hearts. But it was real, more real than many marriages blessed by church and state. As Lydia's pregnancy progressed and the town continued to grow, their unusual arrangement became Canesville's worst-kept secret. New arrivals might be shocked at first, but the old-timers would set them straight. That's the Hayes family, they'd say. All 3 of them. They brought water to the desert and saved this town more times than you can count. If they want to live different, they've earned that right. The baby a boy was born in the spring with Dr. Williams attending and half the town waiting outside for news. They named him Daniel after Anna and Lydia's father, whose dream had started everything. 2 children, 3 parents, Sheriff Coulter said, visiting with another hand-carved toy. Going to be interesting when they get older. They'll grow up knowing they're loved, Samuel said. That's what matters. And they'll grow up strong, Anna added. They'll have to be. She was right about that. As Canesville transformed from frontier town to territorial capital candidate, the pressures increased. Politicians wanted to control the water. Businesses wanted to monopolize it. The railroad wanted preferential rates. But the 3 partners held firm, supported by their town, their allies, and their love for each other. They fought battles in courtrooms instead of canyons, with legal briefs instead of bullets. They won more than they lost, and with each victory their position grew stronger. Marcus Finch was tried, convicted, and hanged for his crimes. On the gallows, he gave one last curse. "That water will be your doom," he said. "It'll bring growth, and growth will bring change, and change will destroy everything you've built." "Maybe," Samuel had replied, watching from the crowd. "But we'll face it together." Years passed. Mary grew into a fierce little girl who could ride before she could properly walk, who spoke Apache as easily as English, who knew she had two mothers and one father and never questioned the strangeness of it. Daniel followed quieter than his sister, but no less strong, with his father's gray eyes and his mother's thoughtful nature. And then came the twins, because, of course, there would be twins. The grandmother had laughed born to Anna and named James and Sarah. 4 children, 3 parents, 1 family that defied convention but worked in ways that mattered. The town grew around them. The railroad arrived with fanfare. Statehood was achieved with Canesville as a major city in the new state of Arizona. The desert did indeed bloom with farms and ranches spreading out from the life-giving water. Through it all, the 3 partners stood together. They aged, they faced challenges, they lost battles and won wars. They raised their children to be strong and independent, to question rules that didn't make sense, to stand for what was right, even when it was hard. "Do you ever regret it?" Anna asked one evening, 20 years after that first meeting at the hanging rope. They sat on their porch, a much grander porch, on a much grander house, watching their grown children play with their grandchildren. "Regret what?" Samuel asked. "The conventional life you could have had. 1 wife, normal family, no whispers or stares." Samuel looked at his wives, both gray-haired now, but still beautiful to him, and at the sprawling family they'd created at the thriving city that had grown from their courage and sacrifice. "I bought a ranch for $22, he said. "I got an empire of love. Best bargain I ever made." "Even with all the times we almost died?" Lydia asked, smiling. "Especially then. Those were the times that proved what we were to each other." Mary approached her own daughter on her hip. She'd married the son of one of Thornfield's deputies, a good man who understood her family's unusual nature and protected it. "Papa? Mama? Anna? Mama Lydia. The mayor wants to know if you'll speak at the Founders' Day celebration." The 3 exchanged glances. Founders' Day had become Canesville's biggest celebration, commemorating the day water was first drawn from the deep well. They were always asked to speak to tell the story of how the town began. "We'll tell the story," Anna said. "The real story. Not the version where Papa fought off 50 men," Mary teased. "The truth is better than legend," Samuel said, standing with some difficulty, old wounds never fully healed. 3 people who found each other through violence and chose to build something from love. That night, standing before the assembled town, Samuel began the story he'd told so many times, but never tired of sharing. "I bought a ranch for $22, he said, his voice carrying across the crowd. "It came with a hanging rope and a woman who refused to die. Her name was Anna Kane, and beside her stood her sister Lydia, and together we discovered that water wasn't the only thing hidden in this desert. Love can flow in unexpected channels. Family can take shapes the world doesn't recognize, and courage isn't about facing death. It's about choosing life, even when that life doesn't fit the mold others expect." The crowd listened, some hearing the story for the first time, others nodding along to familiar beats. The children sat wide-eyed. The adults remembered their own struggles, and everyone understood that they were part of something special. "We've been asked if we regret our choices," Lydia continued, taking over the narrative. "If we wish we'd been more conventional, more acceptable. The answer is no. We regret nothing. Every fight, every challenge, every moment of joy and sorrow, they all led us here to this community that judges people not by who they love, but by how they love." Anna concluded, holding Samuel's hand on one side and Lydia's on the other. "Canesville was built on water, but it thrives on acceptance. We're all misfits here, all refugees from conventionality, and that's our strength. That's what makes us more than just another town. We're a family, all of us bound not by blood, but by choice." The applause was thunderous. People stood cheering, not just for the 3 partners, but for what they represented: the possibility of defining your own happiness, of creating your own rules, of building something beautiful from something broken. Later, as fireworks lit the desert sky and the town celebrated into the night, the three partners sat in their usual spot on the porch. Their children and grandchildren played in the yard, their friends and neighbors stopped by to talk, and life flowed around them like the water that had made it all possible. "We did it," Samuel said quietly. "We really did it." "Did what?" Anna asked, though she was smiling. "Built paradise in the desert, raised a family that shouldn't exist, created a community that accepts the impossible." "We survived," Lydia corrected. "Everything else came from that first moment when you cut the rope when you chose to stay and fight. Survival was the seed. This," she gestured at the thriving life around them, "is the harvest." As the night deepened and the celebrations continued, Samuel thought about Marcus Finch's final words. The man had been right. In a way, growth had brought change. Change had brought challenges. But he'd been wrong about one crucial thing. Change hadn't destroyed what they'd built. It had strengthened it, refined it, made it into something greater than any of them had imagined. The water still flowed deep and endless beneath the desert. The town still grew, drawing dreamers and builders and those seeking a fresh start. And at the heart of it all, three people who'd found an unconventional love continued to prove that the best things in life rarely came in expected packages. $22 for a ranch with a hanging woman. $22 that had changed everything. $22 that had bought not just land or water or even love, but the freedom to define family on their own terms, to build community from acceptance, to transform desert into paradise through the simple act of sharing what others would have hoarded. As Samuel drifted towards sleep that night, surrounded by the sounds of his family and his town, he thought about the young man he'd been riding into Arizona with nothing but a horse and a handful of dollars. That man could never have imagined this life, this love, this legacy. But then again, that man hadn't yet learned the most important lesson the frontier had to teach, that sometimes the greatest treasures came disguised as disasters, that the best families were the ones you chose rather than the ones you were born to, and that love, real love, didn't follow rules or respect boundaries. It simply flowed like water in the desert, finding its way through any channel available, bringing life to everything it touched. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning 40 years after Samuel had first cut Anna down from that rope. His hands, gnarled now with age and old injuries, trembled slightly as he opened the official government seal. Anna and Lydia sat beside him at the breakfast table, their hair silver now, but their eyes still sharp with the intelligence that had saved them all so many times. "What is it?" Lydia asked, noting his expression. "The president," Samuel said slowly. "He's coming to Canesville, wants to see the place that transformed the American desert into the Garden of the West." Anna laughed, the sound still musical, despite her 70 years. "We've become a symbol." "We've become a story," Samuel corrected. "One they tell differently every time." Through the window, they could see Canesville spread out below their hill, no longer a frontier town, but a small city with paved streets and electric lights, automobiles puttering alongside horses. The water tower stood tall against the sky, painted with the words, "Where desert blooms to life." Their children managed most of the day-to-day business now. Mary ran the water commission with an iron hand and her mother's fierce protection of fairness. Daniel had become a lawyer, fighting in courtrooms the battles his parents had once fought with guns. The twins James and Sarah had taken different paths, James to the Apache Nation, strengthening those crucial bonds, and Sarah to the state capitol as one of Arizona's first female legislators. "Should we meet him?" Anna asked. The president, "We're too old for ceremonies," Lydia said, but Samuel heard the curiosity in her voice. A knock interrupted them. Mary entered, her own grandchildren trailing behind her. At 50, she still moved with the confidence of someone who'd survived being kidnapped as an infant and had decided nothing else in life could be quite that frightening. "The whole town's talking about the president's visit," she said. "They want you three to give the welcome speech." "We're retired," Samuel said automatically. "You've been saying that for 20 years, Papa. Nobody believes it anymore." She was right. They might have stepped back from formal leadership, but people still came to them for advice, for stories, for the wisdom that came from surviving when survival seemed impossible. "Tell them we'll think about it," Anna said. After Mary left, the three sat in comfortable silence. They'd moved beyond the need for constant words decades ago. Their love had deepened into something that didn't require explanation or defense. It simply was as natural and essential as the water flowing beneath their land. "I've been thinking," Lydia said eventually, "about the story, the one they tell about us." "Which version?" Samuel asked dryly. "The one where I fought 100 men, or the one where you two are secret witches who enchanted me?" "The true one, the one we've never fully told." Samuel understood. They'd shared pieces over the years, but never the complete truth about their three-way marriage ceremony with the Apache grandmother, about the nights they'd all three shared the same bed while maintaining separate rooms for appearance, about the complex negotiations of raising children in an arrangement the world didn't recognize. "The world's changing," Anna said, understanding her sister's thought as she always did. "Maybe it's time." That evening, Samuel sat at his desk and began to write. Not the sanitized version he'd told at town celebrations, not the heroic myth that had grown over the decades, but the truth. All of it. He wrote about the terror of seeing Anna hanging from that rope, about the feel of her lips as he breathed life back into her. He wrote about falling in love with both sisters, about the impossibility and inevitability of it. He wrote about the violence they'd faced, the Maddox family's cruelty, Harper's obsession, Finch's elaborate trap. But more than that, he wrote about the quiet moments, teaching Mary to ride her little hands gripping the saddle horn, Lydia's tears when she thought she couldn't conceive, and her joy when she finally did, Anna's fierce protection of all their children, biological or not, the way they'd learned to navigate jealousy and insecurity to build something stronger than conventional marriage because it required more intentional choice. He wrote about Sheriff Coulter's gradual transformation from suspicious lawman to protective friend, about the Apache grandmother who'd bound them in ways the law never could, about the town that had chosen to protect their secret, to normalize their abnormal family, to prove that community could be stronger than convention. "Let me," Lydia said on the third night, taking the pen from his cramped fingers. She wrote about the complexity of loving two people equally but differently, about the struggle of being mixed race in a world that demanded you choose a side, about water as metaphor finding its own channels, creating its own paths, nourishing whatever it touched, without judgment. Anna took her turn writing about the children, how they'd raised them to be independent thinkers, to question authority, to stand for justice, even when it cost them. She wrote about Mary's first question about their family structure, how they'd explained that love wasn't pie-taking a piece, didn't leave less for others. It was water. The more channels it had, the more life it could sustain. The manuscript grew, becoming not just their story, but Canesville's story, the West's story, America's story, a tale of transformation, of courage, of the frontier's promise that you could become whoever you had the strength to be. When the president arrived, the whole town turned out. Theodore Roosevelt himself grinning his famous grin, shaking hands with the enthusiasm of a man who genuinely loved meeting people. He gave a speech about progress and prosperity, about American ingenuity and the taming of the wilderness. Then it was Samuel's turn to speak. He stood at the podium, flanked by Anna and Lydia, and looked out at the crowd. His children stood in the front row, his grandchildren beside them, 4 generations of a family that shouldn't exist but did. "Mr. President," Samuel began, his voice still strong despite his years, "you speak of taming the wilderness, but that's not what happened here. The wilderness tamed us, taught us that survival requires adaptation, that strength comes from community, that the most precious resources must be shared, not hoarded." He told the story one last time, the true story. The president's eyes widened, at parts narrowed at others, but he listened. The crowd, many of whom thought they knew the tale, leaned in as they heard details never shared before. "We stand before you as an impossibility," Anna said, taking over. 3 people who loved each other equally, who raised children together, who built a community that chose acceptance over judgment. We shouldn't exist, but we do. Our family shouldn't work, but it does. This town shouldn't have survived, but it thrived. Because, Lydia concluded, the frontier's greatest gift wasn't land or gold or even water. It was the freedom to define ourselves, to create new forms of family community and love. That's the real American dream, not conformity, but the courage to be exactly who you are. The crowd erupted in applause, but Samuel watched the president. Roosevelt stood slowly, his expression thoughtful. Then he did something unexpected. He walked to the podium and shook hands with all three of them. "You've given me much to think about," he said quietly, "about what America is and what it could be." Later, as the celebrations continued around them, the three partners sat in their familiar spot on the porch. The manuscript of their story sat on the table between them, complete now, ready to be sent to a publisher in New York who'd expressed interest. "Think they'll publish it?" Anna asked. "The whole truth?" "Maybe not now," Samuel said, "but someday, when the world's ready." "Or when the world needs to be pushed toward ready," Lydia added with a smile that still had fight in it. As the sun set over Canesville, painting the desert in shades of gold and red, Samuel took his wife's hands. They'd survived hangings and gunfights, prejudice and poverty, the loss of friends, and the weight of secrets. They'd built something beautiful from violence, and pain had transformed not just the desert, but the very idea of what family could be. "No regrets?" Anna asked, as she did sometimes. "Only one," Samuel said. Both women looked at him in surprise. "I regret that we only have one lifetime together. What we've built, what we've shared, it deserves eternity." "Then we'd better make the most of the time we have left," Lydia said. "Together," Anna added. "Always together," Samuel agreed. The stars came out over the desert, bright and endless, witnessing, as they had for 40 years, the impossible love of three people who'd refused to let the world define their happiness. Somewhere beneath their feet, water flowed through ancient channels, patient and persistent, finding its way through stone and sand to bring life to the surface. Just like love, Samuel thought. Just like their love flowing through unconventional channels, reshaping the landscape, proving that the most important things in life rarely came in the shapes the world expected. $22 had bought him a ranch with a hanging woman. But what he'd really purchased was a chance at the impossible, a love that broke all the rules, a family that defied definition, a life that proved the frontier's greatest promise, that courage and love could overcome any convention, any prejudice, any limitation the world tried to impose. The desert had bloomed, their love had endured, their family had thrived, and their story, complicated, controversial, but absolutely true, would outlive them all, inspiring future generations to love boldly, live authentically, and never ever apologize for choosing happiness over conformity. The first pains came at dawn, 3 weeks earlier than the grandmother had predicted. Walks Between Worlds was scouting with Dakota when a rider found them, his horse lathered with sweat from the urgent ride. Ayana's time had come, and it was not going well. They rode hard back to camp, finding controlled chaos. The women had formed their traditional circle, but their faces showed worry. The grandmother emerged from the birthing teepee, her ancient face creased with concern. "The child comes feet first," she said without preamble, "and there is much blood." Walks Between Worlds felt his world tilt. He'd seen men die from gut wounds, watched soldiers scream through amputations, but nothing had prepared him for the terror of potentially losing Ayana and their child. "Sarah Bryant," he said suddenly. "The settler's wife, she was a midwife. She might know techniques." "She is 5 days' ride away," Iron Wolf said gently. "There is no time." From inside the teepee came a sound that would haunt him forever. Ayana crying out, not in normal labor pain, but in genuine agony. Every instinct screamed at him to go to her, but tradition forbade men from the birthing place. "Sometimes," the grandmother said quietly, studying his face, "tradition must bend to necessity. Your white medicine might have knowledge we lack. Come." Breaking taboo, Walks Between Worlds entered the birthing teepee. Ayana lay on layered buffalo robes, her face gray with pain and blood loss. When she saw him, she tried to smile, but another contraction seized her. "The baby," she gasped. "Save the baby." "Save both," he said firmly, his mind racing through everything he'd learned from field medics, from overheard conversations about difficult births. "Grandmother, in the army, I saw doctors turn breech babies. It's dangerous, but show me," the old woman commanded. Together they worked through the next agonizing hour. Walks Between Worlds. Translated half-remembered medical procedures into practical action, while the grandmother's intimate knowledge of anatomy guided their efforts. Slowly, carefully, they managed to turn the child. When the baby finally came, a girl small but fierce, Her first cry strong despite the difficult birth. Ayana had lost consciousness from blood loss. For terrifying minutes, Walks Between Worlds thought he'd gained a daughter only to lose his wife. But the grandmother's herbs and Ayana's own strength prevailed. She woke as the sun set, weak but alive, reaching immediately for the bundle in Walks Between Worlds' arms. "Our daughter," she whispered, touching the infant's face with wonder. The baby had her mother's dark hair, but her father's lighter skin, her features a perfect blend of both heritages. "What shall we name her?" Walks Between Worlds asked. "Maka Waste. Win," Ayana said. "Good Earth Woman. She is grounded in both worlds, belonging fully to the earth itself, rather than to one people or another." Iron Wolf entered the teepee. Once tradition allowed, his face soft with grandfatherly pride as he held Maka for the first time. "She will be stronger for her mixed blood," he declared. "Like metal forged from different ores, she will not break easily." The band celebrated the birth with feast and ceremony, but Walks Between Worlds noticed the worried looks some exchanged. A mixed-blood child, especially a girl, would face challenges they could only imagine. The world was changing rapidly, rarely in favor of those caught between cultures. As if to underscore these concerns, news came 2 weeks later that would reshape everything. The Bryant family, the settlers they'd saved during the blizzard, had returned, not lost this time, but deliberately seeking the band. Thomas Bryant looked haggard, older than when they'd last seen him months before. His wife Sarah clutched their youngest child, and all of them showed signs of hard travel. "The army," Thomas gasped out once he'd caught his breath. "They're coming. All the bands, they mean to force you onto reservations. The orders came down from Washington. Any Lakota not on designated land by winter will be considered hostile." Iron Wolf's face went still as stone. "How do you know this?" "I've been working as a translator at Fort Robinson. I heard the officers discussing it. They know about this band specifically." His eyes found Walks Between Worlds. "They know about you, not details, but rumors. A white man gone native, they say, teaching the Lakota military tactics." "So you came to warn us," White Owl said, studying the settler carefully. "Why?" Sarah Bryant stepped forward. "Because you saved our lives. Because we've seen how you live, how you are with each other. What the government plans, it's wrong. It's murder disguised as policy." "What do they plan exactly?" Walks Between Worlds asked, though his heart already knew. "Forced marches to barren land. Separation of families. Children taken to boarding schools to kill the Indian, save the man." Thomas's voice broke slightly. "I've seen the designated reservations. They're death camps with prettier names." The council that night was the most heated Walks Between Worlds had witnessed. Some wanted to fight to die as warriors rather than live as prisoners. Others argued for negotiation, for finding some middle ground. Still others suggested fleeing north to Canada, where some bands had found refuge. "We cannot fight the entire army," Iron Wolf said heavily, "but we cannot surrender our children to their schools, our way of life, to their control." "There might be another way," Walks Between Worlds said slowly. All eyes turned to him. "The Bryants came to warn us. There must be others among the whites who disagree with this policy. If we could document our peaceful way of life, show them we're not the savages they claim." "You think words on paper will stop armies?" Red Crow interrupted. "No, but they might change minds in the East where these policies are made. Thomas, you're a teacher. You could write about us, tell our truth instead of their lies." Thomas nodded eagerly. "I've already been writing letters to newspapers, to congressmen. Some are listening." "And some are not," Spotted Eagle said grimly. "Writing takes time. The army moves faster than public opinion." They argued through the night, but no clear path emerged. Finally, as dawn approached, Iron Wolf made a decision that would define their future. "We do all things," he announced. "Some will go north seeking safety in Canada. Some will negotiate, trying to secure the best terms possible. And some—" He looked at Walks Between Worlds. "Will stay and bear witness, documenting our story, so that even if we fall, the truth survives." The band began to fragment, each family choosing their path. It was heartbreaking to watch the community that had become Walks Between Worlds' home dissolve, but he understood the necessity. Survival sometimes meant scattering like seeds on the wind, hoping some would find fertile ground. Red Crow surprisingly chose to stay with Iron Wolf's group. "Someone needs to keep you idealists alive," he said gruffly. But Walks Between Worlds saw the deeper truth. The old warrior couldn't bear to abandon the land where his sons were buried. The Bryants stayed too, Thomas working frantically to document everything ceremony's daily life, the sophisticated governance structure, the deep spiritual connection to the land. Sarah helped tend the sick and elderly, learning and teaching medicine in equal measure. And in the middle of it all, Maka grew oblivious to the storm gathering around her. She had her mother's smile and her father's stubborn streak, and when she laughed, which was often, the whole camp seemed lighter. "She gives us hope," Ayanna said one evening as they watched their daughter sleep. "Whatever comes, she is proof that different peoples can create something beautiful together. If the world lets her live to prove it," Walks Between Worlds replied, unable to keep the fear from his voice. Ayanna took his hand, her grip fierce. "Then we make sure the world has no choice. We survive, we endure, and we force them to see us as human." 3 months later, the first soldiers appeared on the horizon. Not attacking, not yet, but watching, waiting, gradually tightening the circle. The band continued their daily life as normally as possible, but everyone knew the end was coming. It was Maka who provided the unexpected solution. Thomas Bryant had been photographing the band with equipment he'd acquired documenting their lives. One photograph in particular, Maka in her cradleboard laughing while Walks Between Worlds and Ayanna stood on either side, their faces full of love and pride, captured something essential. "This," Thomas said, showing them the developed image, "this is what I'll send east. This is what will change hearts." "A photograph." Iron Wolf was skeptical. "A family?" Thomas corrected. "A human family that happens to be both white and Lakota. Your grandson was right. She is the bridge." The photograph, along with Thomas's writings, did eventually reach Eastern newspapers. It didn't stop the reservation system or prevent the cultural genocide that followed, but it planted seeds of doubt, of recognition of shared humanity that would grow in later generations. As winter approached and the Army's presence grew more aggressive, Walks Between Worlds stood with his family watching the sunset paint the plains gold. Whatever came next, reservation resistance or something unforeseen, they would face it together. He was no longer Private Daniel Harper, the soldier who'd thrown a desperate punch to save a frightened girl. He was Walks Between Worlds. Husband to Ayanna, father to Maka, son to Iron Wolf, brother to warriors who'd once seen him as an enemy. The 30 lashes that had nearly killed him had instead given birth to a new life, a new identity, a new purpose. And as Maka reached for him with chubby fingers babbling in a mixture of Lakota and English that would become her native tongue, he knew that regardless of what the future held, every scar on his back had been worth this moment, this family, this proof that love could indeed bridge two worlds at war.